Think about it. Think about it. Think about it.
The meeting will now come to order. Hello, I am Marcia Herbert, President of the Board of Education. I would like to welcome you to the November 8th, 2023 board meeting. In keeping with the board commitment to open communication with the community this week, this meeting is being streamed live on the CCPS website at carrollk12.org and broadcast live on Channel 21. We are also recording this meeting so it can be accessed on demand on our website and broadcast throughout the month on Channel 21. Public participation will be held at approximately 5:15. Speakers will be directed into the boardroom from the lobby and are allotted 3 minutes to address the board. As a reminder, please silence all cell phones and other devices. Board members, please turn off your microphones when you are not speaking. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. At this time, I need a motion for the approval of the agenda.
So moved.
By Ms. Battaglia, seconded by Dr. Dorsey. Comments? Questions? I will make one comment that after our meeting today, we will go back into quasi-judicial for an appeal. All right. Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. Now I need a motion for the approval of the minutes of the board meeting on October 11th, 2023.
So moved.
By Dr. Dorsey, seconded by
I'll second.
Ms. Battaglia. Comments? Corrections? Seeing none, I call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. Now I need a motion for the unapproved joint meeting minutes on October 11th, 2023.
So moved.
By Ms. Battaglia and seconded by
I'll second.
Ms. Savigny. Comments? Corrections? I call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
It passes unanimously. At this time, we will have the Carroll County Student Government Report by our student representative. Thank you.
Our president could not make it today, so I will be giving this report. On Tuesday, October 17th, CCSGA had an executive board meeting during which we finalized the materials for our fall General Assembly and talked about STRAW applications. On Wednesday, October 18th, we had our Fall General Assembly at South Carroll High School, with over 200 student participants learned how to take action by sitting through workshops on civil discourse and servant leadership. Senator Reedy and Delegate Boucher gave our keynote address, educating students on how to use their voices about the legislative process. Additionally, we had CCSGA's first ever youth forum, where students had the opportunity to select from categories such as athletics and mental health, and hear directly from our decision makers in spaces to learn more about what they're doing to better help the student experience at CCPS. We received a lot of positive feedback from both students and panelists alike, and we hope to do it again next year. Thank you to Mr. Novati, Mr. Streeter, Mr. Wernick, Dr. Moore, and Dr. Dorsey for taking time out of your busy schedules to meet with our students. Finally, our CCSGA Secretary, Enya Slowinski, has created CCSGA's first ever resume building workshop that will be held on Wednesday, November 29th from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. If you have a student interested in learning in the ins and outs of resume building, you can register them to using the link on our Instagram or reach out to your CCSGA advisor. Thank you so much and have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you very much. At this time, we will move on to public comment. Ms. Battaglia.
To have an orderly presentation of comments by the public, the following guidelines apply. Speakers with a connection to CCPS will be allowed to address the board for the allotted 3 minutes. Only those speakers that have registered online and have been notified by the Communications Department will be permitted to speak. Priority will be given to those citizens that are addressing the board about an item on the current agenda. Citizens not appearing in person for public comment can write to the board through email or U.S. mail. Public participation is not intended to be a question or answer session. However, if citizens have specific questions, the superintendent will assign a staff member to make contact during the board meeting to arrange a time to respond to questions. The superintendent and board reserve the right to correct misinformation presented as factual after the conclusion of the public participation period. Statements to the board should relate to a recent agenda item, an agenda item that is expected to appear in the future, or matter of general policy over which the board has authority. Personnel matters, pending appeals, the actions or statements of individual staff, or items related to employee negotiations are not appropriate topics and may not be discussed. The board has scheduled time on the agenda for public participation at approximately 5:15 p.m. The board reserves the right to limit the number of speakers on a particular topic so that all topics may be addressed. Additionally, the board retains the discretion to allow additional speakers as it deemed appropriate. The board is allowing no more than 1 hour for public participation. Comments are limited to 3 minutes or less. All comments should be directed to the board members at the dais. Citizens may only address the board with their individual comments. Citizens may not stand in for another person or group and read their comments. When the allotted time expires, the speaker is permitted to complete a sentence. Citizens may leave any handouts for board members on the table in the back of the boardroom. Please do not approach the dais. Additionally, the public may not display signs or posters during the board meeting. In lieu of signs, or if you are unable to complete your comment in the allotted time, individuals are encouraged to submit remarks to the board in writing. Those seated in the audience are asked to be respectful of the speaker and refrain from commenting to the speaker or the board members. And the first speaker is Mike Leeper.
Good evening. First of all, I'd like to thank the board for the opportunity to speak this evening. Upon looking through the public comments submitted to the board over the past several months, it becomes clear that the cacophony voiced by a handful of parents that spurred this entire travesty has been drowned out by an avalanche of objections from a multitude of community members. Given the overwhelming support for returning these books to shelves, I ask what the current status is, what titles have been considered and returned, what is the timeline for the rest. The Maryland Association of School Librarians and the Maryland Librarians Association have both come out against the system's decision to remove said titles, the addition of Appendix J, and the creation of this curriculum supervisor. I'm very curious to know what actual purpose does Appendix J serve. From an outsider's perspective, it appears that Appendix J's only intention is to scare librarians away from any future purchases that any citizen can deem controversial. The most logical outcome of such a policy is that Carroll County Public Schools librarians are exhausted by this new policy and fearful to lose their jobs. They will simply find work elsewhere, and the school system will hemorrhage competent and dedicated professionals. The creation of the curriculum supervisor seems to solve a problem that does not exist, and their only real purpose is to meddle in a system that worked fine beforehand. We were brought to this point because of an uncomfortability with subject matter. A key part of maturing into a critical thinking adult is dealing with uncomfortable topics. Last month, my daughter was tasked with a debate about whether Christopher Columbus, who we consider a monster, should be regarded as a hero. Did we demand the school board remove this assignment or topic altogether? No. We asked that whatever side she was assigned, she would defend to the best of her ability. And we should send a message to our students that we trust them to be competent and mature enough to handle uncomfortable subjects. We cannot cherry pick our past. So I implore the school system to reverse these draconian policies and return to common sense practices and restore equality of voices and perspectives in our media centers. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Gary Foote.
Good evening, members of the board. Last month was National School Lunch Week, and as you were reading the proclamation, I have to admit I got hung up on the word nutritious. Now, I'm all for school lunches, and I emphatically support nutritious school lunches. And let me give a shout out right now to our cafeteria managers and their employees. They do an incredible job. But they could do an even better job if they were given better resources. Simply put, we must eliminate cafeteria food that is prepackaged and highly processed. You see, school lunches are actually less nutritious now than they were 30 years ago. And that's a problem, because life expectancy in the United States is going down. The four horsemen of chronic disease, cancer, heart disease, dementia, and diabetes, all are linked to bad lifestyle choices and poor diet, dietary habits that begin in elementary school and even before, habits that schools should in no way be reinforcing. So I have questions. In a county that takes great pride in its agricultural tradition, why are we nonetheless importing our cafeteria food from other states? Why are our hard-earned tax dollars being spent on food that is harmful? And why are those tax dollars enriching the coffers of multinational corporations, groups who have no interest in the health or safety of our children? What can we do? Well, right now, we could stop selling any beverages that are pre-sweetened or contained artificial colors or flavors. You're right, that pretty much leaves us with water, which is as it should be. Put the vegetables we do serve in the front of the serving line. Students are actually more readily choose what they see first. And we need to stop counting pizza sauce and French fries as vegetables. And let's commit to doing better. What might that look like? Well, for starters, we can find out what local growers would be willing to modify, how they would be willing to modify their operations if they were guaranteed a ready market from the school system. We should explore what fresh produce can be grown here all year round. And I think we would all be pleasantly surprised with what is possible. Why isn't there a community garden on every campus? And why isn't this garden growing produce for the cafeteria? Each member of the board will give a glowing report next August concerning what they observed at the 4-H fair. Which of those programs could be replicated for schools? Couldn't students in our ag programs be growing food for lunches? And couldn't students in our food classes be preparing that food? Our duty to instruct does not end the minute our students walk through the cafeteria door, and when we fail to model healthy lifestyle choices, this ends badly for all concerned. We can do better, and our students certainly deserve it.
Thank you. Next speaker is Greg Melville.
Thank you, board members, for this time. Hello, my name is Dr. Greg Malveaux. I am a parent of a middle school student in the Carroll County system, and I'm also running for one of the 2 seats that will be available for the Board of Education in 2024. Also, I'd like to add that I'm the college-wide coordinator for study abroad and international education at a major institution of 60,000 students. My student population represents over 180 nations and is actually the second most diverse community college in the state, or actually in the country. If you are not aware already, I'd like to bring to your awareness, the board, that we are about to enter International Education Week, which is November 13th through 17th. And I bring this to your attention because of the significant impact that international education has, as well as with grades K through 12. International education is not just about traveling or study abroad. It's about equipping our students and teachers with the skills and knowledge necessary to thrive in an increasingly interconnected and globalized world. By introducing international perspectives into K through 12 curriculum, we can help young students develop empathy and a broader worldview, all while instilling traditional values of respect and appreciation for our own country and culture. In turn, U.S. students can view themselves and their nation through the lens of students from around the world. One suggestion for how we can easily merge international education into our school curriculum is through global classrooms. This U.S.-based global education approach is particularly geared toward middle and high school students. Global classrooms allow U.S. students to virtually enter lessons and lectures from teachers from around the world. If you want to learn about Egyptian history, why not virtually enter the lesson of a classroom at Sahara High School in Cairo? Platforms such as Zoom, Microsoft Teams, Skype, these are not difficult to acquire. I would pose utilizing global classrooms in our public schools as a serious possibility for the Board of Education to consider. There are important workforce benefits with study abroad and international education, and according to University of California, college graduates find jobs 50% faster than those who don't study abroad. Also, college graduates can expect 7,000 more in terms of that first year in that first job on average, and also they serve to close gender gaps with hiring and salaries when doing a gap year. In conclusion, international education is a critical path for preserving our cultural values, fostering collaboration in a globalized world, and maintaining our national competitiveness, and should be immersed in grades K through 12 curriculum. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Dean Horvath. If I mispronounced it, please correct me. Is there a Dean here? No. Okay. And the last speaker is Wendy Novak.
CCPS's core values include a safe and orderly learning environment along with fairness, honesty, and respect. You cannot promote a safe and orderly learning environment as long as you support hate. Students have spoken, begging for help. They are speaking up because they know, as said in the challenge book, The Freedom Writer's Diary, silence ensures that history repeats itself. Students are afraid. Their parents are afraid. You are so afraid that you kept a parent from sharing information about their child because you were worried about their safety. You're protecting a child by censoring their identity instead of working for a safe environment, inclusive of all. To quote the Freedom Writer's Diary, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that if you tell kids they're stupid, directly or indirectly, sooner or later they start to believe it. Instead of telling kids they are stupid, you are telling them they aren't worthy of inclusion, that they are not valued. Then you get insulted when you are held accountable for creating an environment that supports hate. You have an obligation as a leader to be fair, honest, and respectful. The debate over books has been anything but. To quote a challenge book, The Kite Runner, when you tell a lie, you steal someone's right to the truth. There have been claims there are no benefits to these books. At least 3 of the books are a part of the AP curriculum and have shown up on the AP exam: The Handmaid's Tale, Slaughterhouse-Five, and The Bluest Eye. Studies have shown that a well-funded library will raise test scores and close achievement gaps. Stories of trauma are not pornography. Some of you speak publicly that there is no value in these books, are ignoring these facts. Our community has a right to the truth. Some support the lie that supporting LGBTQ community members is grooming. Using that word wrong minimizes when actual grooming occurs, such as the teacher that was arrested for using Snapchat to acquire and distribute child pornography. That's grooming. Acknowledging other sexual orientations exist or gender identity expressions is not grooming. As community members, you should be examples. Calling people a racial slur is not appropriate, even if you disagree with them. Ignorance is no excuse. Once informed, have the integrity to apologize and be accountable for your actions. You allow parents to call other parents groomers for exercising their parental rights to support their child. Some of you have attended events where parents are referred to as groomers, and you share links promoting hatred of certain identity groups. You determined it was not age appropriate for students to recognize and respect that people express themselves in many different ways. Public schools are for all. I will leave you with this quote from the Freedom Riders Diary. No matter what race we are, what ethnic background, sexual orientation, or what views we may have, we are all human. Unfortunately, not all humans see it that way. Thank you.
Thank you. And that is all I have for public speaking right now.
Thank you very much. And at this time, we will hear from employee groups. Here she comes.
Good time. Okay, sorry, don't look at my password. Okay, good evening, Superintendent McCabe, board members. No commissioner tonight. I am Celeste Jordan, president of CCA. Saturday is Veterans Day. Growing up, Veterans Day was a time to remember the sacrifices of some family members. My great uncle Mike, WW1 veteran. My cousin Bernard Ryan was a World War II veteran who fought in the Ardennes Offensive. Battle of the Bulge is the one it's really known as. My grandfather who served in the Philippines between wars. However, as an educator, I started to see my former students join the military, serving our country, and I began to see Veterans Day differently. It is one thing to see a member of the greatest generation walk into the school's Veterans Day assembly. It is quite another to see a 20-something who you taught Algebra 1 as a freshman. On Veterans Day, let us remember all those who have served, but let's make sure that we follow up those thoughts with actions, ensuring that our veterans receive all benefits and recognition they earned, protecting us. I have stood at this podium at previous Board of Ed meetings and shared stories of educators being assaulted in CCPS schools. And yes, it is assault when a student, no matter what their size is, punches, hits, kicks, bites, or spits on an educator. Educators are receiving concussions, and we have all learned in recent times how much a concussion can have a long-term effect on people. Tonight, I stand here to remind all CCPS educators that if you are hurt or injured on the job, you do need to fill out workman's compensation papers, and you need to do this to protect yourself. While you may think an injury is insignificant, it can often develop into something more serious. Next week is American Education Week. The National Education Association was one of the creators and original sponsors of American Education Week. To stress that 25% of the country's WW1 draftees were illiterate and only 9% were physically unfit, representatives of the NEA and the American Legion met in 1919 to seek ways to generate public support for education. The conventions of both organizations adopted resolutions of support for a national effort to raise public awareness of the importance of education. In 1921, NEA and American Legion co-sponsored the first American Education Week to be observed in all communities annually for the purpose of informing the public of the accomplishments and needs of public schools and to secure cooperation and support of the public in meeting those needs. Research shows that parental involvement in school improves student achievement and reduces absenteeism. Parental involvement Parental involvement takes many forms, such as reading to your child, no matter how old they get, limiting screen time, chaperoning a school event, or simply asking children about their school day. Parental involvement can also take the form of asking administration how often your child's classroom is cleared to the hallway because of student behavior, and letting administration know that you expect to be told when your child's education has been interrupted due to student behavior. We all have a responsibility to prepare children to become engaged citizens of the United States. And just like the creation of American Education Week, we all need to come together to do what's best for Carroll County students. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Dr. McCabe, members of the Board of Education. I am Cindy Porter, President of CASE, representing clericals, assistants, and LPNs working in Carroll County Public Schools. When the calendar page turns the day after Halloween, many look at the month of November as the beginning of the end of the year holiday season. This is a month of Thanksgiving, and I was reminded the other day by a meme that for some, the 30 days of November are opportunities to reflect and express gratitude for each day of the month. As I begin, and as an 8-year Army veteran, I would like to offer gratitude to Carroll County Public Schools for the recognition of the importance of Veterans Day to the students in our county. It is important that our children understand what veterans mean to our country because of their dedication, loyalty, and sacrifice, with some making the ultimate sacrifice. Veteran is one of the most important titles I am very proud to have, and I am glad that so many of our schools are taking time to honor these special members of our communities. This month also brings to mind other reasons of gratitude. As a special education paraprofessional in our county, currently in my 25th year, I am grateful for the caring and dedicated educators in our county who are persevering in the most challenging year we have had in education in my career. I am also grateful for those same educators who show their commitment to students day in and day out, and the heart they have for those students that is readily on display in every school in our county each day. I am grateful and in awe of the education support professionals in our county and the dedication they have to forging the relationships and doing what it takes to make sure the students and families in our county have what they need to be successful. These professionals are many times the ones who have knowledge and empathy that will not only help them navigate what our students walk through the door with every day, but to also help the students work through those issues so they can access the learning they very much need. Many of these education support professionals are also the ones at ground zero, dealing with the continuing deterioration of behaviors we have all witnessed over the past few years, with some even sustaining injuries as a result of these behaviors, and many receiving more than one injury. The emotional and physical stresses are taking a toll on the educators in our county. And lastly, I want to express my gratitude for the supportive relationship CASE and CCEA have so we can help each other through these extremely challenging times. It is my wish that the parents and family members of our students walk through the doors of our schools next week during American Education Week, also with a sense of gratitude and with a willingness to learn and seek understanding of others as we ask our students to do every day. In closing, I hope you and your families and the families of our students and community members have a very thoughtful and enjoyable Thanksgiving. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your service. At this time, we will do recognition days and weeks, and we were going to start out to my right with Mr. Whistler, please.
Yes, ma'am. As a fellow veteran, Ms. Porter, thank you for your service. I have the luxury of reading about Veterans Day. Veterans Day will be commemorated across our nation this Saturday, November 11th, as was previously mentioned. On this occasion, we honor the men and women who have served in the United States military. My fellow board members and I would like to thank all of our veterans, especially those school system employees who have served our country. We celebrate your patriotism, your love of country, and your willingness to continue serving and sacrificing for our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Dorsey.
Okay, my thanks as well for your service, Mrs. Porter and Mr. Whistler, and to all of our veterans. I am going to share about American Education Week. Next week, November 13th through 17th, we will celebrate American Education Week. This week gives us an opportunity to celebrate public education and honor those who are making a difference in ensuring that every student receives a quality education. We are very grateful to our dedicated teachers and support staff for all they do for our students. And as always, we appreciate the continued support of our parents and the community as we work together on behalf of our schools and the success of our students.
Thank you. Ms. Pataglia.
School Psychology Awareness Week is being celebrated November 6th through 10th. This special week highlights the important work our school psychologists and other educators do to help all students thrive. This year's theme, Let's Grow Together, is inspired by the importance of both personal and shared strengths in our growth, both as individuals and school communities. Thank you to our school psychologists for their commitment to providing critical support to our students and families.
Thank you. Ms. Savigny.
November has been designated as National Career Development Month. Career and technical education is an important part of the blueprint for Maryland's future. Carroll County Public Schools provides opportunities for our students at all grade levels to explore careers. We appreciate the staff members and local businesses who help our students discover career options and prepare them for a successful future.
Thank you. And at this time, we will have our activities and correspondence, and we will start out with our student rep. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. On October 17th, I attended the CCSGA officer meeting to finalize plans for the General Assembly, and then I attended the Fall General Assembly on October 17th. I presented a workshop called How to Get Involved, and we were very excited to see many people in attendance. I would also like to thank the amazing panelists who were able to speak to many students, including Dr. Dorsey, and a big thanks to Senator Reedy and Delegate Boucher for your inspiring keynotes. We also discussed applications for student representative on the board and our election process. Applications will be released very soon, and make sure to stay updated as we continue through this process. Applications are open to current freshmen and sophomores in CCPS high schools, and we hope to see a lot of interest in this incredible opportunity. With the first quarter coming to an end, make sure to reach out to your counselors for any opportunities regarding jobs or volunteer hours. And a big congratulations to the students who have finished or are about to finish their fall sports and marching bands.
Ms. Savigny.
Thank you, Ms. Herbert. Just wanted to briefly talk about the Teacher of the Year Gala that several of us got to attend back in October. It was a fabulous event, and our lovely Teacher of the Year from Carroll County, Lauren Stevens, she has done an amazing job for us for many years within the school system, and I'm sure she will do a fantastic job representing our county for the full year. Just want to say it was a great event. Lauren looked beautiful, and it was just such a great night of appreciation for teachers and educators around the state, and it was fantastic to be there. And just one other quick comment about I would like to give my appreciation for Veterans Day and all of our veterans in the audience who are part of our school system, who are part of our community. I so much value and appreciate your service and your sacrifice, and thank you for doing what you do to preserve our freedoms and liberties in this great country of ours. Thank you all so much for your service.
Thank you. Ms. Pataglia.
Again, yeah, I would like to thank all the veterans who have given much of their time and their strengths and their sacrifice of the time with their families, for our protection of our country. Out in the lobby, there is a basket out there with a sign that says, please show support for our veterans. There are little flag pins out there, so please help yourself. With Veterans Day being on Saturday, so I think, especially with a lot that's happening right now around the world, I think this is a great way that we can show support to those that serve and have served in our country right now, because there is a lot of unknowns right now, but I think this is a perfect way that we can show support for those that have kept us safe and continue to keep us safe. So recently I have attended the Manchester Wrestling Crab Feed, which was really nice. It was like the one last crab feed of the season, and they were packed and they were good. I attended the trunk or treat at the Ag Center, which was a lot of fun. And if you do see the video on social media, I'm so sorry. Yes, I was a dinosaur trying to do the Macarena and the cha-cha slide, and it was quite interesting. Yeah, it's hard to do in a dinosaur and blow-up costume. And I'm continuing my college studies right now. I'm currently taking a domestic violence class, which is, has a lot to do with the psychology and also the sociology of everything that happens in our society regarding that. Couple upcoming events. We have the LEC and the SAC meeting tomorrow. We have some of us are attending some Veterans Day events this weekend. The CAC meeting is coming up, and of course Thanksgiving. Reminder for any elementary students that are in 4th through 5th grade, Battle of the Book signups are starting up, so make sure you look into that. I do thank our Carroll County Public Library for the continuous support we have with them and the partnership for Battle of the Books. That is an incredible program. My oldest, who's currently in college, went through Battle of the Books when she was in elementary school, and it is a really fun event. And it is incredible to see these kids work together and answer questions and have funny questions asked. That was last year. So it is a great activity. So encourage your kids to sign up for that that are in elementary school. And kids are picking their classes for next year in high school right now. So parents, look for that information to come home. And go see some of your drama school productions that are happening right now this weekend, next weekend, the following weekend. There's a couple different ones occurring around the county. I have my little Man Valley Performing Arts shirt on, so that's just a little plug for Man Val. But I know Liberty High School and I believe Francis Scott Key are doing one as well. And good luck to all our teams that are in the playoffs. This is an incredible time. There's a lot. So good luck to everybody. And I think that's it.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Dorsey.
Thank you, Mrs. Herbert. Okay, I participated in or attended the following activities. On October 12th, the Chamber of Commerce breakfast meeting with economist Anirban Basu as guest speaker for us, and I had to finish listening to that presentation on TV. But again, he's always great to give us the perspective for our economy. On October 13th, I had the privilege of attending the Maryland Teacher of the Year 33rd Annual Awards Gala. And I celebrated the evening with Lauren Stevens, our CCPS Teacher of the Year, fellow board members Savigny and Whistler, Dr. McCabe, Mr. Shockney, and additional CCPS staff and guests. Again, it was a special evening, as Mrs. Savigny has said, and it's just so rewarding when you can hear the profession of teaching being recognized, appreciated, and celebrated. It was very touching to hear the speakers, including Governor Moore, talk about how teachers impacted their lives. And our very own teacher and member of the State Board of Education, plus former Teacher of the Year, Rachel McCusker, also shared a wonderful message as well. So it was a beautiful evening. Again, teaching was highlighted, and it was a very, very special evening. On October 18th, as has been shared, I was a part of the Carroll County Student Government Association Youth Forum at South Carroll High School. I heard the keynote speeches by Maryland State Senator Reedy and Maryland Delegate Boucher, and then I was honored to lead a discussion group and respond to students' questions about Board of Education affairs that directly impact them. A couple of concerns shared by students related to transportation, especially for extracurricular events and AP testing. And we certainly could have used more time to have some dialogue with the students, but it was a very, very worthwhile day for us. On October 19th, I was a part of the meet and greet at Westminster Commons. This was a gathering extended to members of our minority staff as an informal way to network with them and welcome them to Carroll County Public Schools. So we thank Dr. Moore for organizing this event for our system. On October 20th, I attended our county's Equity Council meeting. Agenda items included hearing 2 committee members share their stories and roles as related to the Equity Council and previewing the book, Belonging Through Dignity by Floyd Cobb, which will center our council's focus this year. On October 25th, I attended a planning meeting for our conference program committee, and on November 3rd, our conference program committee met. And during that time, I met with committee members to debrief our 2023 MABE conference. Again, there were 197 registered attendees with good representation at all our major sessions. There was a 68% rate of evaluation forms completed. Overall satisfaction ratings for the conference were positive. 56% of respondents were extremely satisfied, 37% were satisfied, and another 7.5% were moderately satisfied. 59% of respondents were extremely satisfied with our speakers, and as expected, the student panel earned among the highest satisfaction ratings of the conference, with 74% of the respondents choosing extremely satisfied. So thanks again to our student rep for participating on our student panel. Respondents shared suggestions for future speakers and topics, and overall the committee was very pleased with the feedback received, and we'll be using that feedback as we make plans for next year's MABE conference. And finally, as we approach the season of Thanksgiving, hopefully we can each find time to reflect on our many blessings. So thank you, Mrs. Herbert.
Thank you. Mr. Whistler.
Thank you, Madam President. Several items, been a busy month. I also, on October 12th, attended our Chamber of Commerce annual meeting in Westminster. Again, a leading economist offered us insight into major factors that shape our economic outcomes throughout our nation and local area. We do have numerous challenges ahead, including inflation, supply chain issues, and federal, state, and local budget deficits. All these challenges will affect how we implement Blueprint and plan the future for CCPS over the next decade. So I really did appreciate the briefing. Also on October 13th, I attended the Teacher of the Year Gala with my colleagues, and it was great to sit alongside all of you and honor the accomplishments of Lauren Stevens. I was really also glad to see Erica McAndrew there. She was not afforded the same luxury of a gala last year because of COVID, so it was really nice to see her there as well. I was also very glad to see and meet several college seniors that serve as student teachers in our system, and I hope every single one of them comes to teach in our system in the fall. We do want them back full-time. On October 18th, I accepted an invitation to speak with the Linton Springs Parent-Teacher Association about Blueprint and discuss the specific components of each pillar. I'm very grateful that our superintendent, our staff, and all of our school principals are talking to parents and employees about Blueprint and how it will affect us. We have a really informed group of parents that want to do what they can to help us implement everything the right way. On October 27th, I was invited to stand along the sideline and watch our athletic trainers and student athletes in action during the Liberty Century football game. We have extremely dedicated professionals that render immediate first aid and monitor student safety during every play. And as a parent whose child suffered a broken collarbone just last month, I really appreciate all of them being there for our kids. And it's nice to know that our kids are being looked after at every game. Also on October 27th, I attended a memorial dinner for Thomas Mudgett Sr. And for those of you who don't know who he is, he attended the Career and Tech Center many years ago and went on to build a successful business in Finksburg and employed hundreds during his lifetime. And I'm very grateful that his family will donate 100% of the proceeds from that dinner back to the Career and Tech Center. So thank you to the Mudgett family for that. On November 1st, I attended the Light of Carroll Awards at the Reese Fire Hall. And although my nominee didn't win, I wanted to thank the Boys and Girls Clubs of Carroll County for their service to our students. They help students complete homework assignments after school, and they also offer so many after-school activities that build positive relationships among their peers. They also arrange field trips for older students and leverage other federal, state, and county resources to help them consider future career choices. So although they didn't win, thank you, Boys and Girls Clubs of Carroll County. Earlier today, I visited Carroll Springs School in Westminster. Principal Melissa Freeman and the entire staff there do such an incredible job serving the special needs of those students. And I was also glad to see the Carroll County Public Library's outreach department there with their, I believe it's the Storytime Express, and they did a presentation of Chicken Little Puppet Show for students and parents. So it was a great way to bring everyone in the community together, and Principal Freeman is doing an amazing job there. And I'll also close by saying that I've been on the job now for almost a year, and I am just amazed at how so many professionals in this county across all kinds of agencies work together to ensure we have the very best schools in our state. And I can't wait to see what lies ahead over the next year. And so I'll close by wishing everyone a very safe and terrific Thanksgiving holiday.
Thank you, Mr. Whistler. Throughout the month, I had the opportunity to visit several schools. It's always a pleasure, of course, to talk to the students and the teachers, to see the amazing things they're doing. And I did a special stop over at Shiloh Middle. I went to see Bridget Griffin, that I knew very well as a physical education teacher that won a state award. And I hope that I will be able to get to see the other two. I'm sure you're going to say something about that. And thank you, Mr. Vandergrift, for nominating them. Veterans Day, we've all talked about it, is November 11th, and we really do a great job. You can walk in schools and you'll see bulletin boards. They will have special activities. They will have assemblies. They will have breakfast for the veterans. One school's having a dinner and a show. So we do appreciate everything that our veterans have done. And some are actually our guest speakers, and we cannot thank them enough. And a special thank you to all of those who have served our country, and for those who continue to serve to keep our country free. Now going on to one of my favorites, Career and Tech. They're having another breakfast coming up in November, so I don't want you to forget that. It will be December 9th, and Santa and Mrs. Claus will be there. They'll be taking pictures, and of course, they will have their pancakes, French toast, eggs, sausage, home fries, sausage and gravy, biscuits, scrapple, baked apples, and their famous pudding and hominy, coffee and juice. $15 for adults, $10 for students. 6 to 12 years of age, $5, 5 and under free, and of course it goes to benefiting Skills USA. I've been running over to Copper Mine as much as I can after school when Man Valley was playing. A little bias. Miss Kuntz, I taught her, I coached her. She was probably the only player that I ever had to get a full ride Division I scholarship for field hockey at UVA. And that was outstanding, and I have to tell a little story. We were in playoffs her senior year, and UVA coach contacted me, and they were coming to watch another player, and Deneen had a spectacular game. Deneen got the full ride. The other young lady got a half a ride, and she played all 4 years at UVA. So I am so proud of her as an individual, a family member, and a hockey coach, and I wish them the best of luck tonight. And they play at 7:30, and then also South Carroll plays tonight also. So I wish them the best of luck. But we've got boys soccer on Saturday, Century and Liberty. Football, Liberty and Manval. Cross country, that's their state championship on Saturday. Cheerleading is on Saturday also. So I just want to wish all of them the best of luck. And now we will move on to Dr. McCabe's report.
I'd like to begin this evening by sharing that 3 of our teachers have received the Simon McNeely Award presented by the Society of Health and Physical Educators of Maryland. Congratulations to Bridget Griffin, physical education teacher at Shiloh Middle School, Nick DePace, health teacher at East Middle School, and Sean Thompson, physical education teacher at Eldersburg Elementary School. These awards recognize teachers who demonstrate outstanding innovation in teaching health and physical education and who go above and beyond their duties in the classroom. Criteria for the award include demonstration of outstanding teaching and innovation in health, physical education, recreation, or dance. Congratulations again to Bridget, Nick, and Sean. I also would like to congratulate Danielle Schwessinger, Media Specialist at Elmer Wolf Elementary School, for being selected to receive the Tour Scholarship for Strong Public Libraries Award from the American Association of School Librarians. This scholarship recognizes school librarians and media specialists who have created and implemented a local public awareness or marketing campaign that promotes and positions their school library as a necessary resource in the community. Danielle's year-long campaign was focused on increasing the school library's involvement with established school events and programs, including Title I, the Judy Center, and the Book Fair, in order to benefit and fund future collaborative activities. Congratulations. On October 13th, I had the pleasure of attending the Maryland Teacher of the Year Gala and walking in the processional alongside our Carroll County Teacher of the Year, Lauren Stevens, from Manchester Valley High School. We are all very proud of Lauren, and we know that she will do an exceptional job representing our school system at the many events and activities in which she will participate in over the next year. As mentioned during the board member reports, we will be observing Veterans Day this Saturday, November 11th. I wanted to take just a moment to thank our veterans and to say that our schools have planned many wonderful activities to honor them for their service and their sacrifice. You can read about many of these activities on the homepage of our website right now. And finally, as we look ahead to American Education Week next week, I would like to encourage parents to partner with teachers and administrators to ensure the success of their child. You play an important role in the success of our students, our schools, and our school system. I also would like to personally thank our employees for all they do to ensure that our students learn, grow, and succeed. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will fess up, I was the only one that did not attend the gala. Oh, you missed, okay, good. I've always done this, and I will tell you, and most of you know this, I have a horse farm, and I do riding lessons on Friday evenings, and we had a medal finals the next day, and my girls had to get their horses ready, and we had to do a riding lesson, and I want them to be prepared for that day. So, and I did teach Lauren, and I know she will do a fantastic job. At this time, we will move on to presentations, and it will be the CCPS Strategic Plan.
As part of our ongoing work with you to develop a revised strategic plan, we are returning tonight with a presentation that incorporates feedback from our previous work session. Mr. Shockney is going to present a new draft for your consideration and discussion. We have done our best to reflect the feedback you provided during our last work session. As part of the governance of the plan, Mr. Shockney will also share a proposed annual reporting timeline. Lastly, associated with the development of a revised strategic plan, we have discussed our common goal of producing an online CCPS dashboard. I wanted to note that this work is very much underway. Working with key staff, I am in the process of developing the technology platform for the dashboard, as well as an initial plan for the data elements to be included. Once we are a bit further down the road with our work, we will be able to present the data dashboard in draft for your discussion as well. Mr. Shockney?
Good evening, Dr. McCabe and board members. I'm going to walk you through kind of the version 2.0 of our 2023-2026 strategic plan. On August 30th, we presented kind of the initial plan for you. This one looks similar yet a little bit different because I brought in some of the other pieces from our previous strategic plan. It is still based around the 4 key pillars. The first pillar, which we've talked about slightly modifying the title, we just simplified it, and I went with the action verb of improve student achievement. The other 3 pillars remain unchanged from the previous plan. Throughout this document, I know we discussed this before, but for any citizen listening, there's lots of blending between our imperatives along with a few blueprint imperatives as well. So on the first page, on the very next page, you'll just see a little, obviously there's our board listed and a little table of contents. If we keep scrolling down, On the next page, this is the board's core value statements and core statement values and beliefs. These remain unchanged from the previous strategic plan. I did make one little tweak. I did revise the language of, instead of using professional development, I used professional learning. But that is, there is no change to that language from before. Just want to pause for a minute and make sure we're okay with that language. All right, see a lot of heads nodding, so if we could scroll down to the next page. This is a forward-facing document, so what we did is we updated our demographic information, talked a little bit about what Carroll County Public Schools is all about. There's student information there, obviously our number of schools, our enrollment. There's some budget facts as well, a breakdown of our student race and ethnicity groups, our students receiving special education services, attendance rate, and graduation rate. So we wanted to paint a picture for anyone who may not be familiar with our system, a lot of the things that make us unique and special. There's a lot of celebrations in that data as well. If you go to the next page.
We have a, Ms. Battaglia.
I was just going to say, this is good to have, because I know, with, blueprint and legislation, getting ready to start again, and everyone trying to figure out how everything's going to work. This is good to show the community, especially when those that don't understand why certain things have to be the way that they are and why things are being implemented the way they are, because this shows, okay, this is the wealth of the county. This is the, how much is spent per child. So, I mean, that's been some chatter I've seen on social media lately too, is, why is this? Well, it's because of this.
Yep.
So I do appreciate that being in there.
Page 5 just gives a little summary of what the strategic plan is, along with some quick student performance facts or data. And on the left column is our MCAP data, which we've previously discussed and presented. There's also some average or some mean scores for the SAT, along with a few other quick kind of staffing facts that are unique to CCPS. On the following page, page 6, this is just a little graphic that we've utilized in the past to identify our 4 key areas or our pillars, which again, just simplified. The only change again is just academic achievement in our green pillar there. If you scroll down slightly, it talks a little bit about what Ms. McCabe alluded to earlier, which is our annual reporting and evaluation schedule. We have 4 different pillars, so we've selected 4 different months in which we will bring to you a report on each pillar. That will identify our progress, how things are going, and then if any adjustments or tweaks are needed to any priority focus area or objective that we may have. But Pillar 1 is going to be contingent upon when state data is released to us. As we get into Pillar 1, we'll talk a little bit more about that now in a few minutes. But very heavy on MCAP data. So obviously we need the MCAP data, and we may need it for a few weeks before we can to disaggregate and break it down and be able to present. But I'm envisioning an early summer, hopefully, that may adjust. Pillar 2, family community partnerships, we thought May would be a good time toward the end of the school year when we have kind of some cumulative data for the school year. Pillar 3, successful workforce, we propose February because that aligns well to the annual reporting that Mr. Diaz brings to you in February on our staff. And finally, Pillar 4, safe and secure environment, we thought June would be good as well to be able to give you a cumulative look over the course of the school year. So again, I'm open to feedback or suggestions if there's any tweaks or changes that you'd like to the reporting schedule.
So, Mr. Shockney, I think the schedule of June for the safe and secure environment makes a lot of sense, especially that aligns with the EFMP and everything, right?
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
Fantastic.
All right, great. Okay, so on page 7, which is our next page, starts to break down the 4 different pillars a little bit more, and it gives a little description as to each pillar. And again, these descriptions, our pillars structurally remained unchanged from our last strategic plan. So again, those 4 key pillars. And then if we could start on page 8. Now, I do apologize to the public because to get all this on one nice, neat page, the font needed to be a little small, but I wanted to kind of keep it in one working area. But this document is available to our public at any point in time. If Again, if you're working with it, you can zoom and see things a little bit better, but I do know it's a bit strained up there. But this is just to kind of break down the structure. This pattern is repeated for each of the 4 pillars. This is pillar 1, which is improve academic achievement. Under each pillar, there are objectives. It's a little different number for each one. In this pillar, we have 2. And then it's further broken down into priority focus areas. And then as you work across, there's a baseline of where we start with our data point. There is then for each year of the strategic plan, there is a target. And then there's blank spaces for performance. What did we do as it relates to the target? And met, is it a yes, no? That's what we'll fill in time as we go. I know we've discussed that previously, just to make sure that anyone listening out there understands the structure behind it. If you look at the priority focus area 1, which is related to reading and reading by the end of grade 3, that remains unchanged from what we presented to the board from the August meeting. What is new, though, is that second priority focus area. We discussed a math metric, wanting to bring in something related to math in when we talked in August. So what we did is we identified the Algebra 1 MCAP as a data point to help measure our progress over time. And I will say, just to reiterate to the community, everything builds upon the metrics that we've identified. So obviously when we're talking about adding math as a priority focus area, it's not just math and Algebra 1 when a student takes it in late middle school or early high school. It's also everything that aligns to that, and over time, what do we do? These are big picture goals, and we want them to be big picture goals because, again, that helps our departments, that helps our schools, that helps our teams, that helps our teachers break down and align their work to our plan. For each of the first and second priority focus areas, you'll see that there is a performance rating for the all student group, but it's also then broken down by 3 specific student groups. And these are the 3 specific student groups identified in the blueprint as well, too. So you'll also see specific performance and indicators for students experiencing economic disadvantage, our English learners, as well as students receiving special education services. And I know that's difficult to read, but we did roughly, we replicated the Algebra 1 metric as to what we did with the grade 3 MCAP data for reading as well. Okay. Mr. Wiltster, I know that was a suggestion you had in August.
Yeah, I really appreciate this focus, and I really appreciate you wrapping it around the blueprint requirements too, as far as that. But just fantastic. Thank you.
I really like how you have this laid out. I think it's clear and concise, and I think you've done a wonderful job of setting all this up. And it's very easy to read, and it all joins in with the blueprint. So I want to thank you you and your team for doing this. Is fantastic. And I can read it because it's not that blue or purple color. Like I can't read it through that. But
the way you purple later in the document. I hope it's okay.
I'll let you know.
Yeah, and I hope this really shows.
Yeah, I can read that.
I really hope that our folks listening. I hope this shows the sense of urgency that our entire system is placing on academics, especially in the math area. But again, I really appreciate these are terrific KPIs to monitor.
Great. Thank
Key
you.
performance indicators. Sorry for the acronym.
And lots of work from the cabinet, from the folks sitting behind me and Mr. O'Neill, as well as a collaborative effort on this one. So a lot of folks work very hard. The final thing I just wanted to highlight under Pillar 1, we had a metric that existed before. I just wanted to point out, and that's around college and career readiness. There is a interim CCR standard, which is what our 21% is based off of. However, that standard is changing, and it will look different. So we'll update that metric. There's lots of discussion. MSD is in the process of reviewing some additional, right now CCR is based upon roughly performance on the MCAP, but there's been lots of discussion about expanding to GPA and students' grade point average, and then could that help them qualify as college and career ready. So just wanted to point that out. That may change a little bit in time.
Mr. Shockney, before we move on, I do want to echo some of the comments that Mr. Whistler and Ms. Herbert said about this is excellent work. It really shows a focus and an immediacy to the work that we're doing. Yep. The one thing I wanted to ask about was, before we kind of get to the end of this, but there's so many things that we do during the course of the year that come out as part of, several of the pillars, but I feel like student achievement is that everything that we do is kind of geared towards student achievement, but we don't necessarily spotlight or understand everything that we're doing on a regular basis to focus on the student achievement. And I'm curious if maybe we can kind of build something like that. I know this is a specific presentation for tonight, but if maybe each of the board meetings that we pick one topic from the strategic plan of just kind of talk about what are we doing to address that particular item. I don't want to add work to anyone's plate, but I think that it will help us keep our focus and help keep the community understanding that this is stuff that we're working on constantly and consistently.
And that can go along with our plan for presentations for the year, which includes sharing different aspects of the blueprint plan. So as we share those different aspects, we can also make sure that we hit upon the elements that are in our own strategic plan that support the blueprint plan.
That would be great to see that tie back to everything that's going on with the blueprint and how this may or may not impact our version of the strategic plan.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, Pillar 2 is up next, which is strengthen productive family and community partnerships. The first priority focus area remains unchanged, but a second one was added, and I know it was discussed at the August board meeting to potentially add something around our kind of solicitations and procurement process. And I'm going to turn to my colleague here to the left if there's anything in particular. Yes, ma'am.
Stay right there.
Okay.
Dr. Dorsey.
I'm sorry. While we were still talking about the student achievement, I was just thinking about the data dashboard and how then this is going to connect. I mean, are we going to be able to use this actual plan to go right into the data dashboard, or what do you foresee there?
Yes, I think the data dashboard can include metrics from the strategic plan along with some other key metrics that we feel are important and that we want to make sure are forward-facing. This document will be forward-facing as we move forward. And again, as we update our performance, measures and so forth, we can make sure that obviously it's reported here. But if there's any kind of measures along the way that we want to highlight, our dashboard will be able to do that.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Battaglia?
Just want to make sure, you're still on the pillar regarding,
I went fast. We're now, I'll jump back into pillar 2 there, which is the orange one. You can keep going down. Ms. Battaglia.
okay.
We all flipped over to
sorry.
page 9.
Page 9.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's where I'm at. Okay.
Okay,
No, that was
good.
just me. I didn't know if you had already
Nope, still
touched
working
on
on it.
it.
So we did add one objective, which is increased transparency in the public procurement process. And then we added, if you keep scrolling down a little bit more, Ms. Bowers, we did add a priority focus area there related to posting solicitations in additional public marketplaces.
I was going to say, I know the LAC committee meeting, they tried to update this, all the local businesses. Mr. Eccles tries to update what is going on with that every time we have one of those meetings to, trying to create more of those partnerships with the internships.
Most definitely.
Partnerships that we're
And that is
looking
a
into
huge
doing.
priority. We've done a great job with our internships over the years, and you can see the numbers reflect that. And then Mr. Eccles and that entire team really have worked very hard to expand those opportunities. But we also really want to expand our apprenticeships, which is a little bit different. And again, a tremendous opportunity, and so is an internship. I don't want to lose sight of that opportunity as well, too. But some paid apprenticeships are tremendous, and there's lots of resources out there. It's getting those relationships established with our current community partners and building on them to provide some opportunity for apprenticeships.
So I'm always telling them we need more bus drivers, we need more educators, we need more custodians. So now we're gonna have to ask businesses for more apprenticeships.
Yes.
So are we knocking on doors, beating doors down? I did send Mr. Eccles about 4 weeks ago to a very promising individual that graduated from North Carroll, and I hope he does an apprenticeship. So
We're doing all those things, and we're trying to get some of the internships transitioned into apprenticeships. There's some different requirements and things that go along with that.
absolutely, and I understand the difficulty.
Yeah, and in time, it's one of those things. This is a great thing, but in time, we will continue to grow and improve. But we're we have a low baseline to start with. But again, we will continue to work hard, and we will build that in time. And it's one of those things, as we share the successes and as other businesses see the successes that maybe one has chosen to engage in, that's when that healthy competition and spirit grows. So we just know it needs time, and we'll educate and build it as we go. All right, let's move on to Pillar 3. Okay, so a couple of revisions to what we previously discussed under Pillar 3, which is develop and support a successful workforce. We have the first priority focus area remains unchanged from the last iteration, along with the second, which is a focus on our national board certified teachers. However, the priority focus area 3 is new, and Dr. Dorsey gave us some feedback and asked us to bring back a metric about the diversification of our workforce. And as you can see there, what we've done is developed a metric or goal that says that our workforce will be representative of our student population as well too. So you can see a baseline from where we stand right now with the diversity of our workforce. You can also see the diversity of our student population, and that's based upon last year's student demographic data. And we've set a goal of being within 1% of our staff groups are reflective of within 1% of our student groups. The other addition that's new for this here is 4. There was also discussion around class size, and I don't want to steal the thunder of the school directors and Ms. Whittle, who are going to be talking about our class size report shortly. But I brought in the metrics from the class size report into the strategic plan. And there's kind of 2 key areas there at each level, elementary, middle, and high. And in each area, we're talking about the core academic areas, English, math, social studies, and science. And at the high school level, it also includes modern and classical languages as well. So you can see there's a baseline and a target set for the average class size, as well as the number of classes over 30. Because we've talked about this at length, about a potential implication of the blueprint. One thing we may be able to do is create additional resources in some of our schools, but we may have to shift staff from other places to be able to make that work. I think there's still lots of work that needs to be done, but we heard loud and clear that the board wanted a metric related to class size as part of it. So that's what we tried to capture there.
And that's a great segue to what we were talking about with talking about how the blueprint may impact, the metrics within our strategic plan. So to keep an eye on that is, I think, I appreciate you adding that piece in here.
And the other one is very much also connected to the blueprint, the final one there, which is priority focus area 5, which is related to implementation of the career ladder. And we know that it's going to take roughly 125 teachers to get us to that approximate 60-40 split. So there's a plan on phasing that in over time, which will allow us to implement that component of the blueprint. Any questions about Pillar 3 before I move on? All right. So Pillar 4. Pillar 4 remains, we did struggle. This is the one that there was a metric in there about climate. And it's really difficult to measure climate without a survey. I know we had some reservations about the data from the state survey. So I eliminated that. So we have 2 priority focus areas, 2 objectives under Pillar 4. Which is establish a safe, secure, healthy, and modern learning environments. The first one is around our exercises, our security exercises that we do within our building. And then the second one is around the FCI, which we know has been a focal point of the board for many years now. So we want to preserve the FCI as a priority focus area. Questions about Pillar 4?
Thank you so much. This was excellent.
Board members, at your direction, we can put this out for public comment now that you seem, if everyone is comfortable with the direction of where we're going, and we can make any adjustments as we go, but that would be my recommendations on next steps.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the addition, Mr. Shockney. I appreciate that.
Yes, Ms. Savigny.
Mr. Herbert, I did just want to bring up, I know as part of Pillar 4 in the past, we had like behavioral stats and things like that, because that definitely has an impact on the safety and well-being of our students and staff in various buildings. I know that we took some of those stats out because they're very difficult to track and set goals for, because like you don't necessarily want to preclude folks from reporting things or doing referrals because it might look bad on stats that are being tracked. It's very difficult to put goals around behavioral data that might promote not necessarily the behavior that you want to have happen. So I understand taking it out, but you know, Ms. Jordan, you had kind of talked about, you know, behavioral impacts and things that have been happening at the state level, where our hands get tied in many ways about discipline practices and things like that. Like, I'm curious, how do we, I think it's something that we can't lose track of. It's having a significant impact on our schools, on our students, on our staff. It's a huge factor. How do we track it? How do we put plans together and, you know, that address the concerns?
Well, you know, we have to track that data. We turn that data into the state, and our student services department. That's a huge part of the work that they do amongst themselves and with our school-based administrators and school psychologists, behavior specialists, et cetera, et cetera. So there's no way that data can get lost because it's such a big piece of what we do as an organization and what we're accountable for. Just because it doesn't show up in the strategic plan doesn't mean that we aren't tracking it and trying to improve what we know is an issue here, across the state, and across the nation right now.
Ms. Savigny, I know it's difficult because I understand exactly where you're coming from, but if I could say, rest assured, this is not there isn't a day that goes by that either proactively or reactively in my role I'm not working directly with the cabinet members who are working directly with our principals and staff on either improving or addressing student behavior. It is a daily part of what we do, both in a proactive way, in a good way, but also in a responsive way too. So the difficult part is the measurability of the piece that we've discussed this candidly before. Whenever you address a behavior, whether it's an individual student, a group of students, a school, or a system, you know, when you target that behavior, you often see an uptick in behavior before the behavior gets better. Behaviorists will tell you that all of the time. So it's hard to put a metric that says a reduction of suspensions or a reduction of discipline referrals, because that's not necessarily always the case. We want to make sure that we are we have clear expectations for students. We're helping teach behavior. And when a student struggles, we teach behavior just like a student was struggling in the area of reading or math. We're going to address that. We're going to put in interventions. We're going to always hold that student accountable, don't get me wrong. But we teach, we coach, and we work through it. But there's not a day that goes by that the folks in the back here, there's several administrators in the room, they will attest to the same thing. This is very much a part of their daily work, not only responsively, but proactively as well in what they're doing to address very targeted areas.
And
I'm sorry.
I would just add to that, and I think we've talked about this before as a board, is that one thing we want to avoid is, you know, when you have a data point, let's say suspensions or discipline referrals, and you link to that a decrease in suspensions or discipline referrals, and we say that if we are able to decrease those data points, that the climate in the school is better. And that's not always the case. And then you have the situation where administrators in schools feel pressured not to suspend or not to send home the behavior referral so that their school isn't looked at as one that has a poor climate. So that's what we're trying to avoid. We want schools to do what they need to do, both with positive and restorative approaches as well as with traditional discipline in order to get the behaviors that we desire for student learning.
Dr. Dorsey?
I understand what's being said, but again, I don't want us to lose sight of this. I mean, it's one thing when people say, you know, well, we're dealing with a lot of discipline issues, and discipline is really, really challenging. It's really bad now. I mean, when we saw the numbers, it gave us some feeling, some sense of maybe how bad or not as bad things were. So again, I hear what you're saying about the numbers and how it might be hard to come up with a goal and, you know, what the goal might actually be referring to. But again, there was some power in seeing those numbers because I think it gave us an understanding of what school staff are dealing with.
Ms. Battaglia?
That's what I was going to say. Like, I remember seeing it from Mr. Streaker, you know, before, like, we would see the documentation of, you know, how many behaviors referrals were at this school and the severity of it, you know, elementary-wise and the severity of it. So I think sometimes seeing those things is good to see, to get an understanding of where do we need probably another behavioral specialist, where do we need to have another resource. And then I have to go, okay, wait a minute, now we got blueprints, and we got to make sure the resource, they might not have the same behavioral issues at one school versus another school, but a blueprint's going to require all the resource go to this other school, and that's going to be the difficult part. But I mean, I did like seeing those numbers because it kind of like put things in perspective, and it necessarily didn't mean that was a bad school. It just meant that, you know, they just had a couple more struggling students than versus another school. And I think it was good to just kind of like identify and see that.
And that was interesting too, because I was just going to add on to that, because sometimes we saw it was just those repeat offenders, so to speak. And that gave you a picture too of what the school was dealing with.
Right, I completely agree with what you're saying, Dr. Dorsey, and it goes back to the general statement of that which gets measured gets managed, right? And you do want to measure it so that you understand. I think your strategic plan should have some basis. Every significant challenge that the school system has should be somehow incorporated into the strategic plan so that we then know what resources we need to provide in order to achieve the strategic plan. So if we think that one of the biggest challenges is behavioral and discipline issues, then we need to measure it so that we know when, okay, we need to put more resources in that direction, because that's really what the strategic plan is meant to provide, right? The direction of how do you direct your resources to achieve your goals.
But then blueprint might change.
It might, yeah, but I don't think that we should lose sight of what our goals are as a school system, both before and after Blueprint.
Mr. Streaker, I see your ears are burning back there, and you made a face, and do you have any comments, or what would you like to, this is part of your area, so do you have anything that you would like to say?
While he's walking up, if I could, I know you're making a dashboard, Dr. McCabe. This behavior things, is this something that can be accomplished in the dashboard, not necessarily in the strategic plan? Yeah, so we can track it with the dashboard.
I think we could report. I mean, like, we could certainly provide, as I don't know what the plan of reporting is, but we could certainly provide a report along with Pillar 4. The concern was always the measurable and the goal. That's the issue. It's not the report. We could certainly provide report over, like, as part of the reporting on Pillar 4. We could provide that report that we have in the past that would compare, year to year, the percentage of students. One of those things that's in there particularly is the percentage of students that this represents. That's another challenge. It's a small percentage of our students that are represented in that data. And I think that's another thing we struggle with as we try to make a decision of setting a goal. And we certainly didn't want to convey a message of less is better or more is better. It's not about that. It's about but to your point of seeing the progression over time. And one interesting note we did see for sure was coming off of COVID, our percentage of students, the percentage of students increased because it was more students that were not used to the kind of behaviors that we expect in school. And we've seen the percentage of students declining, not to the point that they were, but they're declining. So again, we can provide a report.
I might propose if we, maybe I could add a footnote to
Thank
the
you.
chart. Thank you, Mr. Trigger. I could add a footnote to the chart that says something to the effect of it's part of the Pillar 4 report, an annual report on our student discipline data will be provided as well too. But that's,
Okay.
we could do that and incorporate that as part of our dashboard.
I don't have a problem with that whatsoever. I think that's a great idea.
No, it sounds like they're doing it anyway.
Right.
But it's
They're
just
doing
getting-
it, so
Right.
yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah, rest assured though, and I understand completely what gets measured, gets done, but this is very much a part of our daily work every day in our schools here at Central and in our classrooms as well too.
And I thank you for all this hard work.
Thank you, ma'am.
Uh-huh. All right. Now we will move on to the school construction report.
Okay. For the monthly construction report, I have one significant update I'd like to share. After a fairly smooth process that allowed us to get the new East Middle School facility opened in time for the school year, we subsequently encountered our first significant issue on the site. In the part of the site where the old school was located, which is to be the permanent parking area and bus loop, after removing the old building, we discovered a large vein of rock that needs to be removed. Working with our construction manager for the project, they determined that the most efficient and effective way to address the rock vein was through blasting. However, after an initial week and a half of blasting, there is still a need for further removal. You are aware that the project has been successful, but was tracking right at the overall budget. This causes us to need to pause and work out details with our construction manager on how to best proceed with the site work. Our staff is meeting in an ongoing manner with our construction manager and developing a comprehensive plan for me to consider. My direction is to address the project comprehensively to cover not only the rock removal, but also any other remaining aspects of the project, as well as an overall budget plan. I anticipate having that plan in the next 2 weeks and will be able to share the details with you at this time. If you have any questions, Mr. Marks is here.
Mr. Marks, I do want to thank you for our conversation today. You explained it very well, and as a board, these things happen, and I'm sure we will get through this. And with your leadership and our meetings, I think you've lost a few hairs and you're gotten a little grayer. But this will all work out, and this is one of these projects that this is what has happened. But how are we doing on everything else? How is the career and tech coming? Let's talk about something good.
Career Tech is fine. We're on schedule with our next program moves. We're going to be taking care of machine tech over Christmas break, winter break. We're going to take care of moving them in, and we have welding behind that and other moves. So we're doing fine over Career Tech.
Okay, and thank you, because this has not been easy, I know, for you this fall, and trying to get the bus loop done and make everybody happy at the same time, so.
We appreciate this.
Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you.
We thought we'd give you a break. All right, we're going to move on now to another report, staffing analysis and class size report.
Typically, this time of year, we bring the annual class size report, which examines staffing levels and academic class sizes at the elementary, middle, and high school levels. As you are aware, swings in class size across the system are something we will be watching as we move forward with Blueprint implementation. The cover sheet to the report provides a broad summary for each level, but Mr. Shockney and our school level directors are here to answer any questions you may have.
All right, good evening again. You've got me back. Our cover page really summarizes the class size, staffing analysis and class size report. You can look, there's a 3-year trend there for each area. At the elementary level, our average class size, and again, this is for our core academic areas, reading, math, social studies, science, and at the high school level, including modern and classical languages. At the average class size at the elementary level is 22.7. That's an increase of 0.3 from the previous school year. There are no classes over 30. At the middle school level, The average class size is 25.3 students, an increase of 1/10 from the previous school year. There are 184 students, 184 classrooms, excuse me, over 30 students. And that metric is also captured, if you remember back to the strategic plan, that's in there as well. And at the high school level, the average class size is 22.5 students, a reduction of 0.7 students from the previous school year, which I will tell you is directly attributed to dual enrollment. We have an increase in dual enrollment, which is the direct causing factor for our slight decrease at the high school level there. So with that said, Dr. Farber could not be with us for this evening. I'll step in as Dr. Farber at the elementary level, but we do have Ms. Gramata, Mr. King, and Ms. Whittle here to answer any questions that you may have about the class size staffing analysis and class size report.
I just want parents to look at these numbers because they will not be the same in about 3 years due to blueprints. So I just want, and I want everyone to be aware of that, because it's not fair. We know what we're doing, and we are doing a really good job, but I just I want parents to be aware of this. I'm not being negative, I'm just being honest and what is gonna happen to the school system. And I won't be around. I will be gone in a year, and so will Ms. Savigny, and we will try our hardest, but it's gonna be a very sad state of affairs in the next 2 to 3 years when we see what we have to do with class sizes and moving teachers. And I am very concerned about that because that's going to shape a whole different look to the Carroll County Public School System, which I'm very proud of.
It'll be interesting because we'll have very high class sizes in some places and very low class sizes in others, so the averages may look very similar to this. But when you get into the actual specifics
Yes.
into the class size report and look at it by school, that's where you'll see the differences.
And you guys aren't even trying to use that as a scare tactic, because people like to try to, well, that's a scare tactic they're using to get people to be against blueprint. That's not the case. This is what is going to be required that we have to do.
Yeah, and actually, the way it's going to manifest itself is if you look at page 5 of this report, which we get every year. Thank you, Mr. Shockney, for that. But if you look across this, there aren't significant outliers or deviations across this. It's pretty consistent. Oh, it looks like it's sideways on the screen.
That's 4, yeah, right. That's okay.
But if you look at the minimum class sizes and the maximum class sizes, like it's pretty consistent by school, by grade level. There aren't significant outliers on there, but this page is going to look very different under blueprint. So this is where it's going to manifest itself. Like you said, the averages are going to look the same, but it's the differences by school and by grade level and things that are really going to pop right out.
Very much so. And historically at the elementary level, obviously the standard is 30, but we've also monitored it closely at 25. We have 13 elementary classrooms over 25 at this point in time. So obviously that's it's something we monitor very, very closely as well.
And another thing I want to say is Dr. McCabe went ahead and did the town halls and got ahead of this and was leading in the state. Now you'll see other counties finally doing town halls, which we did a year ago. So, again, we're leading the pack on what's really going on. And I want to thank her for doing a great job. And I think there's more people on board and seeing after you open the book and go through the pages, it's going to be very trying.
And time will tell. I think the class size piece, we've identified that as an early concern for us. Again, I don't want to speak to any other system, but each school system has its challenges.
Yes.
So in time, we'll see if there's any flexibility or any sort of supports built in along the way. But again, this is our baseline of where we stand presently.
And thank you for all your hard work.
And I just had one question. On page 4, where we're looking at the elementary school FTE totals, I know we had talked about the math resource positions, and we had said that there was schools in the southern part of the county that are sharing the math resource teachers. But my question was over with the media specialist column. I noticed there are 5 with a .2 assignment, and I was just curious, is that the same media specialist who's filling those .2 assignments?
Is that the same media specialist split?
One media specialist plus another one coming in for a day.
I know, I'm
But
wondering
the
about,
.2, is that the same .2 spread across, or is it the same person?
Yes.
it is the same person?
We might have to double,
Okay, I was
we
just
may have to
wondering-
double check that, Dr. Dorsey, but we
Okay.
can find out and let you know.
Okay, it's not a big deal, but I was just questioning.
And
how
that .2, the
worked.
additional FTE is based upon the enrollment of the building, correct?
Right.
Correct.
Mhm.
We normally will work with the individual, some 1.2, some 1.4, so they may be paired up in 2 schools.
Mhm,
Some
okay.
may work.
Sure.
But we'll find out, Dr. Dorsey, we'll get back to you.
Ms. Savigny, did you have another comment?
Oh, I'm sorry, no.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you all very much. And now we will move on to, looks like we are going into action items. And I need a motion for the approval of the schematic design for the Cranberry Station Elementary Kindergarten, Pre-Kindergarten Addition Project.
So moved.
By Dr. Dorsey, seconded by Ms. Battaglia.
This item and the next 3 items are for approval of schematic designs for K and pre-K projects at 4 elementary schools. While the board will need to approve each schematic design individually, I wanted to make some initial comments that will apply to all 4 projects. The schematic design for a project is consistent with the educational specifications developed by the local construction committee that the board appointed. In this case, we want to thank Dr. Dorsey and Mrs. Savigny for serving on the committee. The project budget, as approved in the FY25 CIP request, was developed by applying the Public School Construction Program's published construction cost per square foot with an annual escalation of 5%. The consultant's cost estimate included in the schematic design was developed utilizing market data and assumes a 13% escalation cost between now and the midpoint of construction. Due to these differing methodologies, the expected costs are 13% higher for Cranberry Station, 2% for Sandy Mount, 17% for Friendship Valley, and 9% for Tawnytown over the current budget request. During the design development phase, our team always works to refine the design and manage costs by focusing on things such as construction material selection and creating alternatives for non-essential items. You've seen similar value engineering and alternates on the East Middle and Career and Tech projects in the recent past. When we get to the later stages in the project, we will know if we need to make adjustments to the project budget in the next CIP request. As a reminder, there is a blueprint connection to these projects. We have discussed at multiple meetings the requirements of pre-K expansion under Pillar 1 of the blueprint. For these 4 schools on the agenda this evening, these 4 projects are all part of the broader picture of us addressing our capital needs to support blueprint pre-K expansion. Lastly, I do want to acknowledge the school staff who serve on the construction committee as well. I know we have the principals here this evening in support of the projects, and I want to recognize them and thank them for their efforts. Would you give us a little wave so we can see who you are? Thank you, thank you. So with that, President Herbert, we can go through each of these one at a time.
Correct.
For approval.
All right. We already have a motion for the approval of the addition at Cranberry Station. Does anybody have any comments? Yes, Ms. Savigny's got her card up.
I actually have a lot of questions, so I apologize in advance. But just trying to, I appreciate that precursor, Dr. McCabe, but just trying to, I appreciate the fact that, there's a construction premium to construct smaller additions. I'm struggling a little bit with the fact, though, of, that each one of these is coming in pretty significantly over money that we just budgeted as part of the CIP last month. I don't want there to necessarily be an expectation that, we're just going to increase our budget request down the road. I think we really need to try to live within the budget that we had submitted to the commissioners, be good stewards of the taxpayer money, understanding that we do have the need for this space, not only through Blueprint, but sort of legacy projects that never really got finished in the past. So totally understand. But I did notice it seemed to be a common theme across all 4 of the projects that the square footage that came through as part of the schematic design is more than the square footage that was part of the ed specs. So just trying to understand, I mean, I know that there's always constraints and different things that come out as you are dealing with the space that you have at each one of these locations, but I'd like to be very cognizant of, like, okay, if we're just looking at the Cranberry Station one first, it was the ed specs said, 4,150 square feet, but what's actually in the schematic design is 4,537. So it's like 10% higher square footage, and I'm assuming that's a good chunk of the additional cost for
Mr.
this
Kane?
particular project?
The additional square footage is a portion of it. The capital budget request that was approved in October, though, was amended based on where the design was at the time. So the square footages that built those budgets that were just approved, the budget requests that were just approved, were not based on the ed spec. They were based on where we were in design. The ed spec process develops programmatic space, the classroom space. We need an 800 square foot classroom. What we don't do is say, well, we need a 100 square foot hallway to get there, because it's different depending on the buildings. So there's a gross square footage, which includes hallways and basically access points to those classrooms. When we develop based on an ed spec a gross square footage, we use an efficiency factor that's a guess at what an efficient building generally would be. But when you're adding onto a building, it's very difficult to be that efficient, because you're not building it new, you're kind of tacking on, so it's generally not as efficient. Some good cases, two of the projects at Tawnytown being one, Sandy Mount Elementary being another, the most logical place to add the addition because of the site and location actually caused us to take a corridor through a classroom. Well, when we basically take the classroom and cut it in a third to create a corridor, we've got to replace that classroom. So now we're building additional square footage to replace the classroom that we took to basically get to the new addition. So there's some of the projects required that just because of the nature of where it made sense to put the addition, and just if we had been able to build a whole new school we can be much more efficient. But when you're adding on, it becomes difficult to do. And at the ed spec phase, we're kind of taking a guess at what the gross square footage will be. The design process is a process. The design evolves. It's based on the educational specification, but it does have to evolve. There's a lot of things other than the program needs, building codes, life safety codes that require space, and the designer has to meet those code requirements. So the square footages do evolve through time. The schematic design, where we are right now, is very conceptual. I will say, based on the construction estimates, the cost estimator is going off of limited knowledge of the project because they're conceptual. So they're being conservative. That's what they would typically do, because they don't have all of the details that a bid document set would have. Their methodology is slightly different than when we build the capital budget, because we use the state published cost per square foot, which is based on the state collects public schools that have been bid, but they collect new schools and replacement schools, complete projects. They don't collect small additions. So their cost per square foot number is really geared towards when you're building a whole school. There's a lot more efficiency in that. The cost estimator, which is the consultant that the architect hired to do the cost estimate, is using real market data out in the world based on collecting bids, collecting, down to the HVAC systems they're collecting, talking to contractors, they're talking to down at a more granular level than the state process for building the budget that we typically use. So I don't know if, tried to answer multiple questions.
Right, right. No, and I appreciate all that, Mr. Kane. It makes a lot of sense. I guess one of the things that I was looking at on, I guess if I'm just looking at Cranberry Station, like I'll just focus on that one for now, but you know, the pre-kindergarten classroom, the ed specs said 1,000 square feet, whereas the schematic design has 1,338. So that's, you know, 34% increase.
And that'll be something through the design process that we will look to refine. Part of the reason I believe at Cranberry, that room came out a little larger because the architect was trying to continue the line of the existing building, the exterior walls. Instead of having the wall, basically a foot in from the rest of the school, so you have this corner and offset. They were trying to continue the exterior of the building. When you do that, you add some square footage, because when you're working on the outside box, then when you draw the spaces inside, some spaces end up a little bigger.
Right. Yeah, and I appreciate that, there are constraints that you're working with, right, that make it a little bit more difficult, but I would hope that would maybe be one of the first things that we look to as trying to manage this down to the to the original cost estimates.
So the reason we get cost estimates during the design process is to do that, to inform the design. So when we get a cost estimate at schematic design, as we move into the next phase, which is design development, we know we need to work on bringing that back to where our budget is. That'll be done in design development. We'll get another estimate when there's more detail on the design and we're 3 or 4 months closer to bidding it. Then we'll move into construction documents. We'll get another design estimate when there's much more detail on design, and that construction documents will be much closer, within months of bidding it. So we'll have a better idea at that point of where we track. And if there is a point where we believe, the team believes that we've done everything we can to keep it within the budget, but the market conditions just right now indicate that we can't get there, we could come back. Now, we will do everything in our power, we always have, to try and work with the constraints of the budget to make sure the designer is tasked with that. And one way they could do it, if we get to that point, would be to reduce the program. If we do everything we can and the team still says it's going to cost more than you have, the board always has a choice to, we're not going to ask for any more money, we're going to cut program. That's a choice to keep it within the budget, but that does cut some of the programmatic needs out of the addition. So, but ultimately, it's always the choice of the board. We do our best as a team to make sure that we get it to where the budget is, keep the design within the budget, but sometimes the market doesn't cooperate. And
Okay, appreciate that, and I think I just want to make sure I understand exactly what we're approving, right? Because we're saying we're approving the schematic design. This is what the schematic design currently says, and we know that the cost is higher than what we're expecting. So it's like I really would like us to try to do more to manage that down to the original budget request. So within the confines of the fact that we're approving the schematic design. Does that make sense?
I think they're pretty much saying that.
Mr. Whistler.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. A couple of questions. One, to our principals, thank you for putting in such a long day and being here. Another long day, right? But are you all good with these plans, and you love the way it looks? Good, because we want to make sure you're supported. And then second, and I may have missed it, but do these plans all include necessary playgrounds and related things for these expansions?
so the budget cost estimate right now does not include an additional playground to what exists. When we do the project, we would like to, if a school doesn't have a, pre-K, one of the pre-K program requirements is to have a playground that is geared towards those children, which are under, playgrounds for 3 to 5-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-olds, I guess, are different than other playgrounds that are for above. So generally, they require specific equipment just for the pre-K.
And that's my concern.
Some schools do not have that. We would make that an alternate because At this point, where we are, the estimate says we're over. We would do everything in our power during the design process to try and make sure we can do that, but that is something, from the project's perspective, not critical to getting the addition built. There's other ways we could address providing the playground through other funding mechanisms.
Right. I would really appreciate, if it's okay, an estimate for the costs for playgrounds for that appropriate age group. I just don't want to see these costs pushed onto our PTAs if we can avoid it.
Yeah, no, and we would, at design development, we'll break out alternates, and then we'll have another cost estimate. There will be an estimate at that point for alternates, how much we think they'll cost, and then how much the design will cost. So this isn't the end, the schematic design isn't the end. It's kind of the very early beginning of the design process, and we'll be coming back for design development with a more detailed set of plans and specs, and then construction documents are actually the ones that will go out to the bid market, but the board will approve those before they go out, and they'll see the estimates for each of those components.
Sure. Again, just personally, it would really be nice if we got those estimates and all-inclusive playgrounds where you have like the rubber matting and not the mulch. And
I think they would agree too.
Yeah, it's just I just don't want to see these costs pushed onto our PTAs. It's just not good in my eyes.
Ms. Pataglia?
And to your point, Mr. Whistler, I mean, I know there's been this continuous conversation regarding playgrounds. We just need to do what is required by blueprint law. The thing is, too, with the playgrounds, they're not going to get the Taj Mahal playgrounds that PTAs and PTOs have been advocating for and raising money for. They're going to get the bare minimum when it comes to that for, what is required by a school system. Just like if a new school, if a new school was built and we had to put in a playground, it's not going to be the top of the line. They're going to get the bare minimum that the school system can afford. So I want the public to understand that, we get it. We know people want to have their really nice Taj Mahal playgrounds with the rubble mats and everything. But when it comes to everything that this school system is required to do, and there's only so much money, we got to make a decision here. Like, that we just need to do what is important, what is required, and so that way we can make sure our students are successful and doing what we need to do to make sure our teachers are taken care of.
I do want to, I'm trying to read body language. I want to make sure we've answered Board Member Savigny's question satisfactorily. And I want to say that it's been a bit since we've been through this process, even though we have East and Career and Tech underway. And the process, although those are large-scale schools, the process is the same, but it's been a while, and it's a very complex process. And I sat down with Mr. Prokop and Mr. Kane today and refresh my precise memory of parts of it. So I just want to say that up front to frame this. But we're not asking you to vote on the budget, except when the CIP is before you, and then ultimately on the total cost of construction when the bid goes out and comes back. But everywhere along the way, in a as Bill said, a pretty thorough design process, we bring you a budget estimate for transparency's sake, for your sake, and for our sake. And as this process unfolds and gets deeper and deeper into design, we'll even bring you, and if you can think back to Career and Tech's the one that stands out in my mind. Bill's talked about add alternates. We'll even bring you those add alternates or value engineering components for your approval as well. We use different materials for the roof at East, and at Tech I think we had the awning as an add-on at East. All of those kinds of things we'll do, as well as look at the materials up front. And then only when we have to, or if we have to, we'll get down to square footage and programs. But we can and will do that as well if we need to. But you're going to see every step of that along the way. And as those documents get more involved at design development and then construction documents, those are the time periods where we typically invite all of you to come in before a meeting and meet with Jim and his staff and kind of go through them. So I don't want you to feel like you're approving a budget. There's an estimate attached to each part of design. there's an estimate tonight. We're not asking you to change your budget at this point.
Thank you.
That would only
Right.
come later, either at a CIP or at bid award. And even then, you don't have to approve it. We've been very fortunate. I think we got very close with Easton Career and Tech. There have been boards of ed who've gotten to the final outcome of what the market says and have had to say, we can't do this project right now. So you're not on the hook until you approve that construction contract. We hope we never reach that point like some other places have, but I just want you to have the comfort level that you're not changing the budget tonight and you're not going to change it again when design development. We're just tracking it with an estimate so that ultimately we can try to get to the finished product.
And I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Mr. O'Neill. And I agree. Like, I just wanted to make sure that I was stating that, okay, we're approving the schematic design, but subject to the fact that there may still be changes to the schematic design to bring it back within our original estimated budget, right? Because I really think that it has to be one of our guiding tenets that we're going to try to stay within our budget. Like, I don't want there to be this expectation come next CIP cycle that we're just going to increase the budget request, right? Because we couldn't figure it out, right?
Yeah, and not to split the hair, but not so much change the schematic design, just change the design at whatever stage in the process it's in. Tonight it's schematic design, it's going to be design development, it's going to be, at each of those stages, they'll be refined, carved differently, looked at differently until we get to the final product that you can live with.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other comments on the Cranberry Station? All right. I call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. Now I need a motion for the approval of the schematic design for the Friendship Valley Elementary Kindergarten, Pre-Kindergarten, and Pride Program Additional Project.
So moved.
By Ms. Battaglia, second by Dr. Dorsey. Now that we've been through this, and Mr. O'Neill, thank you for explaining that, because I think the budget was a real hang-up, and I do understand that, because when we work with commissioners, we don't want to change numbers in the middle of the stream. All right, any other comments about this one then?
You got one?
Oh, Ms. Savigny?
I guess my comments would probably just be the same for this. I do have some differing comments for some of the
Okay,
other
all right.
buildings, but for this one, I think my comments are just the same as they were previously for.
All right, anything else? Okay, I call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. And now I need a motion for the approval of the schematic design for the Sandy Mountain Elementary Kindergarten, Pre-Kindergarten Addition Project
So moved.
by Ms. Battaglia, and Mr. Whistler will second that. All right, Ms. Savigny, did you have a question on this one?
I do.
Okay, and I'm so glad that you did explain about hallways and lining up at the outside. It all makes sense, and yeah, and every school's different, so I'm glad you made that explanation also. All right, she's flipping pages.
Oh, yeah, I'm trying to get to the right place, but.
That's okay.
Okay, so, and this is one where I was kind of looking back to also to so I was looking at our CIP request, I was also looking back to our EFMP, like the enrollment projections and things like that, right? Because like at Sandy Mount, this is a bigger project than the other three, I guess Pride makes it bigger at Friendship Valley, but but Sandy Mount is bigger than Cranberry and Tawnytown. Because if you look at the enrollment projections, I think what we had as part of the FMP, so Sandy Mount is projected to increase. It's already at 107% of state-rated capacity, and it looks like it's going to increase to 124 by the end of 2025. And I think, Mr. Kane, you have included in here what those projections would look like, assuming, is it a 2 kindergarten addition, 2K and 1 pre-K, I think is what those enrollment, like the state rated capacity was based off of.
So you're talking about at the end of the project, what the state rated capacity would be?
Well, I guess I was right. Like, so what was in here at the end of the project, but this was, what was in the EFMP was just based on 2K classrooms and
Correct.
1 pre-K.
Last year's enrollment, or earlier this year's enrollment projections were based on adding 2K or 1 pre-K. So, right.
Okay.
The enrollment projection document, yes. The schematic design assumes that the state rate capacity will go to 634, which includes 4 kindergarten and 2 pre-K.
Right.
So there's,
right.
yes, the schematic design documents are off a little bit from that initial assumption, which was done last spring.
Right, and that's why I was just trying to make sure I was connecting all the dots, because, you know, the enrollment projections only dropped to, what was it? Only 112% in the out years. So, like, clearly we needed a bigger project than just the
Correct.
2 and the 1, which is why Sandy Mountain is now looking at 4
Well,
or 6 additional classrooms, right?
and
Or 7, maybe.
part of it also has to do with the location of the existing kindergarten rooms and no ability to add on to the building where they are. So we looked, as a committee, we looked at building just the 2 kindergarten and 1 pre-K, but where the addition needed to go was in the back of the school, which was the complete opposite end of the school from the existing kindergarten and pre-K. So we said it would make sense to build all of the early childhood classrooms in one area, and at the same time, that would help address the enrollment projections. So we did look at that as a committee. That's what the committee felt like made the most sense long-term. So that's what the schematic design before you shows, is that we'd be building 4 new kindergarten classrooms and 2 pre-K classrooms.
And 1 third grade room, right?
Right, because of the connection is basically taking out some of the existing 3rd grade classrooms. And we're renovating another part of it to be one of the pre-K rooms, so, correct.
Right. So, Mr. Robbins, you would have to reconfigure all of your classrooms, right? Because all the ones that are currently kindergarten classrooms are going to be pushed to the back of the building.
We're very creative and but yes, it would.
Go ahead. Yep.
It would require for us to be able to or reorganize our school and our grades so that we have, a great way to organize the different grades so that we can have our, like I said, what Mr. King said, early childhood in one area. Then we'd be cycling back through 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and those pieces.
Okay. And I understand, so with the outdoor playground in the front of the building, that's not usable space because there's no exit from.
Well, it's no longer a playground. It's we have a pergola, and it's an outdoor classroom area.
Outdoor classroom, right.
But I'll leave that to Mr. Kane to talk about. But in terms of I guess what the
part of the difficulty there is adding on would in that space would take away all of the exterior windows and exterior doors from the existing kindergarten. And then there is also, if you're familiar, that the corridor next to the office is at one elevation. The corridor across the courtyard is at a much lower. So there's no way to tie and the space together without some major redoing of one of those wings and renovating part of the existing building to make it ADA accessible. So it just really didn't initially, I think, last year when I was looking at it, there might be space to do it, but as we got into design it and looking at the existing building, it really doesn't lend itself at all to adding on in that area. The area in the back really is the most, it's really the only area because Sandy Mount is on such a tight site.
Right.
So that's what kind of led us down that path to look at that area and then look at, the other thing I'd note is that the existing kindergarten rooms at Sandy Mount are probably, don't quote me, but they're probably, if not the smallest in the system, one of the smallest. They're well below 1,000 square feet, which is kind of our standard for a kindergarten classroom. They're much closer to a typical 800 square foot 1st or 2nd grade classroom, so they're very tight for running the kindergarten program with all of the learning centers and things that they do.
My son went to Sandy Mount, so yeah, it's a very tight
It's
school.
the big meeting, it's all about
Yeah,
it.
both my kids went to Sandy Mount. So. All about Sandy Mount. But, okay, and I thank you so much for that walkthrough. I guess just trying to make sure that we're not overbuilding in terms of, so we've got the 4 and the 2, right? The 4 kindergarten, 2 pre-K, and then the 1 extra third grade classroom. That takes the state-rated capacity up to
634
634.
is, and that would count, the 2 existing kindergarten classrooms would become just available for any other grade, and then where pre-kindergarten currently is would become available for a first or a second or a third grade. So that 634 is based on 3 of those spaces, those 3 spaces becoming available for capacity.
Okay. So yeah, I'm just trying to understand. So I'm looking at the enrollment projections for Sandy Mount, so that they would still be, so at 634, it's still
not
there's still not as much as is potentially needed.
Right, correct.
Okay, so we're not overbuilding by putting in 7 classrooms there.
Correct.
Okay, all right.
All right, I call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. Now I need a motion for the approval of the schematic design for the Tawnytown Elementary Kindergarten, Pre-Kindergarten additional project.
So moved.
By Dr. Dorsey, seconded by Ms. Battaglia. Go ahead, Ms. Savigny.
Of course, I have one.
That's okay.
So again, kind of going back to the enrollment projections, Tawnytown is never expected to be at or over capacity. I know that this is a legacy project, right? Trying to get the additional kindergarten and pre-K classrooms in. But I did notice that we added an additional pre-K.
When you look at the plan, we actually, the corridor and the storage workroom in blue, that was the existing pre-kindergarten classroom. So in order to make the connection to the new addition, we have to take space from the existing pre-K, and then there's not enough leftover space to keep it a pre-kindergarten classroom, so we have to replace it in the addition. We do utilize that space still to meet some of the programmatic need. The instructional resource room is in the ed spec. That becomes renovation as opposed to building it in the addition. So we're building a little more square footage, but not a whole lot more than we would have typically. The easiest is if there's a corridor that ends in a doorway and you just add on to it. We didn't have that in this, in an area where we could add the classrooms. What made the most sense was to go through the pre-kindergarten classroom, so we had to replace some of that space.
Okay, I guess that's the one that I was kind of struggling with the most when looking at the square footage estimates, because it was probably 70% higher than what was in the ed specs, but I think it was because we were adding that additional pre-K that we don't really need from an enrollment perspective. It's just,
the school does have 2 pre-kindergarten.
I was gonna say, I thought this was especially one of those schools that there's a wait list on.
Where it's planned
for pre-K. Is that correct? This.
But I believe there's a plan to add a second very shortly, ahead of when the addition will be done at Tawnytown because of the demographic and the need in
That's
the
what
Tawnytown.
I was wondering, is there a wait list? Because I think this is one of the schools that it is constant. Like, people are trying to get into pre-K programs, and there's not much up there due to the population need.
okay. And is there, I guess I was just thinking about adding the additional space that isn't, there's existing space within the school that can be utilized, but it's not appropriate to pre-K. Is that the?
I would say there's probably not a lot of space from the principal's perspective, which she can share, but yeah, I mean, yes, she could probably float some folks or shuffle people around, but there's not another room that would be appropriate for pre-K with the space and the toilet room and other.
Okay, so I guess that's where the enrollment projections don't really tell the whole story, right? Like the school looks like it's under capacity, but it's not.
I think the last visit I had there, the gifted and talented program used one of the classrooms when they were making sure that, they're trying to offer those services. And then you also had, I believe it's birth through 5.
Yes, we have a Judy Center.
Okay, and you have that there. And then there is a lot of pull-out for children. It's particularly in need because, again, you have that population that has that need
Yes.
in that
we
area.
have the Title I teachers too, yes.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, I call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously.
And Mrs. Herbert, before we move on, it has been my pleasure to certainly work with the committee of folks who've been looking at the additions for our pre-K and K classrooms. And, just to put it out there, what do we want our kindergarten and pre-kindergarten spaces to look like? I mean, the teachers, the staff members, the principals, you all know what's needed to make those programs run effectively and efficiently. So again, thank you so much for all the time that you've invested in coming up with the plans. And it's going to be so exciting moving forward. And I know you all are ready for them to get started tomorrow with those projects, right? So hang in there. And again, we are expecting some beautiful new additions to your school. So
And now you can go home.
And I
Thank you.
I do want to echo Dr. Dorsey's comments. I want to thank you all for all your work and effort on these projects. Please don't take any of my questions as as any negatives on the work that was done. I'm just trying to make sure everyone is on the same page, understanding, so that we don't end up in a situation that we were in several years ago, where enrollment projections and capacity were low, and the battles that we had to get into with commissioners and everything. I just want to make sure everybody's on the same page, that this is all needed and very justifiable. So thank you again for all your hard work.
Thank you. Thank you. And now I need a motion for the approval of personnel appointments.
So moved.
By Dr. Dorsey.
I'll second.
By Ms. Battaglia.
I have one recommendation for appointment this evening. Mr. Terry Malloy is retiring as the Administrator of Athletics at Westminster High School after many years. I am recommending Mr. Brian Tomes for the position. He is currently the Academic Facilitator at Liberty High School.
Comments? Questions?
So Mr. Malloy has already retired. I see that Mr. Tomes starts tomorrow.
Well, there will be a little bit of overlap.
Oh, okay.
But
I was going to say, I did just see Mr. Malloy the other night.
and we did pay tribute to Mr. Malloy the other evening at the football game. So it was a very nice celebration.
Yes, he has served the community well and the high school both. So, anything else? I call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And I will abstain because I am too close to, it's almost like a family member. So it's 4, and I did abstain. Thank you. All right. And I'd already talked to one of the assistant superintendents about that. All right. And now I need a motion for the approval of personnel action items.
So moved.
By Ms. Battaglia and seconded by?
Second.
By Ms. Savigny.
Here are the monthly personnel action items. There were 5 new hires, 6 broken contracts, and 1 decrease in FTE.
Any comments? Questions? I call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. And now I would like to have a motion for the approval of the 2024-2025 school calendar.
So moved.
By Ms. Battaglia and seconded by?
I'll second.
By Ms. Savigny.
In September, I presented a draft 2024-2025 calendar for your discussion. It was then released for 2 months of public comment. Ms. Gaddis has summarized all the feedback for you, and the proposed 24-25 calendar is returning this evening for your action.
The only thing I can say is that thank you, Ms. Gaddis, for that information. And we only had 15 total comments about the calendar for next year. That's extraordinary. But I just want to thank you for taking the time and do that. Oh, Ms. Bowers, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else have any comments or questions?
Well,
Miss-
again,
Dr. Dorsey?
even though there hasn't been a lot of comment from the public, again, I'm still in favor of starting the school year prior to Labor Day. I think there certainly are advantages to that. One being that it would give us some opportunity to certainly recognize our Jewish students and staff members and consider giving an off day for one of their high days when no work is to be permitted. So again, I know that, when we look at our surrounding counties, the majority of them open prior to Labor Day. I think only 9, we're one of 9 that starts after Labor Day. So again, I'm just putting in my plug for beginning before Labor Day, and that also would give us the ability to recognize the Jewish holiday and the possibility of ending a bit earlier as well.
Ms. Savigny?
I appreciate that, Dr. Dorsey. I just want to go back to the survey that we had done of the community a couple of years ago, where basically the responses that we got were 50% of the community said always start after Labor Day, and another 25% said start after Labor Day when it's relatively early in the month. So it was basically 75% of the community saying they'd prefer to start after Labor Day. So I think that's where we ended with that. So I would understand where you're coming from, but I think I'd prefer to stay with, that's my logic for staying with the current schedule.
Yeah, and I guess I'm just a product of the older way. Again, during our tenure in the system, there were advantages to starting before the Labor Day holiday. And again, I'm not going to go into those at this point, but again, just know that that's where my heart is, with an earlier start for the school year.
Thank you, both. All right, I call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
4-1 then. Thank you very much. All right, now I need a motion for the approval of revisions to Board Policy BC-Ethics. So moved by Ms. Battaglia, seconded by?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Battaglia.
Last month, Mr. O'Neill and legal counsel provided.
Ms. Savigny, sorry.
Oh,
Sorry.
Last month,
that.
Mr. O'Neill and legal counsel provided for your discussion revisions to your ethics policy. These revisions were prepared with Mr. Constas from PK Law to incorporate the changes necessary to comply with recent changes with the state public ethics law. As we shared last month, unlike other policies, this one requires not only your approval, but also approval by the State Ethics Commission. Mr. Constas has worked with legal counsel to the State Ethics Commission so that we know that if you approve the revised policy this evening, it is also approved as conforming with state law.
Questions, comments? We
Ms.
received two
Herbert?
comments.
Oh, that's what I was going to ask.
Okay, right. We received 2 comments, and either Ms. Bowers or Ms. Gaddis, thank you for getting those to us. Dr. Dorsey?
I just have a question. It is ending on that final page. I saw the end mark there, a semicolon. But there's nothing more that follows number 3, B1, B3. It's the very last page.
Oh, I see, yes.
So this is the end of it? It's missing a page? Okay. Can we even put it up tonight? Do you have it so we can?
I can't look at it until they're done.
It should be page 6, page 7.
I have page 7.
Yeah, it should be page 7.
So it's 34. Are those the regulations? Right. I'm wondering if it's the administrative regulations.
I'm a tad bit lost at this moment, but what is posted on the board's website with the agenda is accurate. It's 34 pages. And it's,
Oh, okay.
Well, we definitely do not have 34 pages.
it would be the identical 34 pages that you had in October.
Okay.
There were no edits.
All right.
Honestly, I went back to the one that we had from last month just to make sure
Sure.
that I had all my comments kind of.
All right. Do you have any comments then, Ms. Savigny?
What's that?
Do you have any comments?
I don't.
Okay. It's
And
the
you
same.
have all 34 pages?
No, she went back and got the
I
one
went
from
back
last month.
and looked at last month's to see if I had written anything down.
All right. Well, it's not necessary because there was no changes.
All of our concerns were addressed from
Right.
last month.
Last
There
month.
were no changes.
Right.
So.
Okay.
Well,
All
and
right.
I didn't go back and pull mine, and I just questioned whether there was more, but didn't go back to mine
Thank you for
last
looking
month.
at that.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So I'm comfortable with
You're
approving
comfortable?
it. I don't know if
Okay.
the rest of you comfortable with approving.
All right.
Dr. Dorsey, are you
You
comfortable?
okay?
I am, because
Okay.
again, I would
Right.
have reviewed it last month, but again,
Okay.
I
All
didn't
right.
go back
Okay.
and pull my own, and then I just wrote a question. Is there
Okay.
more
All
to
right.
this?
All right. I call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. Now I need an approval of award of bids.
So moved.
And then seconded by? Second by Mr. Whistler. Thank you.
There are several items on the award of bids this evening. First is, I'll go through all of them, and then you can ask any questions you may have. First, we have A&E services for roof replacements at Spring Garden Elementary and North Carroll Middle School. This is for the architecture and engineering services for these upcoming CIP projects. Next, this and the next item are both part of the ongoing furniture and equipment updates for the Career and Tech project. First, we have the CNC bench mill machine, and then we've got the furnish and install machinery for machine technology. Next, we have fingerprinting services. This award is for the fingerprinting services for required background checks for new employees. Next, we have a classification study. This award is for a classification study for the positions in our school system that are not part of or related to the Blueprint Career Ladder. Next, we have a fire pump replacement at Liberty High School. This is an emergency procurement to replace the fire pump at Liberty. Our assessment indicated that while the fire pump is functional with ongoing repairs, it needs to be replaced to ensure long-term reliability. Next, we have furnish and install the outdoor sign for Spring Garden Elementary. This is for a new sign at Spring Garden and reflects the efforts of the community fundraising at the school. And lastly, we have electronic recyclables, transportation, and processing. This award is for an annual contract to properly dispose of our electronic equipment. Questions?
Ms. Savigny?
Dr. McCabe, I did have a question. So on item number 1, so North Carroll Middle is not in the CIP request, or at least I didn't see it.
I thought it was. I thought it's been.
I'll let Ray have, I think, the CIP. I'll let Ray point that out.
I printed out the CIP that we have on our website that was approved for this year, and I did not see it. Maybe I'm just missing it.
It was previously funded.
It was previously funded, so that's why it's not in the CIP. Okay. Okay. Perfect, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, gotcha. And,
But Mrs. Savini, is it okay if I just?
Sure.
Oh,
Since
sure,
she's
go right ahead.
talking about number one, I was just noticing again, the power of the technical points. Because I saw that there was another bidder that was lower priced as far as the dollar figure was concerned, but lacked the technical points. You know, so this is just an example of how, you know,
How it works.
how important it is,
Yes.
the technical piece of it versus the salary.
yeah, I actually had kind of made note of that with the 60, only the 60.25 points. So what would be an example of why technical points would be so much lower on a particular proposal?
Yeah, sometimes it has to do with the written proposals. Maybe, you know, one company might do it a bit better. They may have a better team. They maybe have a better crew that they're putting forward with more experience. Things like that can just change those numbers.
One company may respond much more clearly to the scope of the RFP than another company. And so you might not, you may, as a member of the committee or the committee as a whole, walk away saying, well, I'm not really sure that Ray Prokop Engineering actually fully addressed the scope of the RFP the way that we need it to be. There's
Okay,
not-
so they may have been a lower bidder, but the scope of the project that they would be providing would be significantly less, potentially.
And again, Dr. Dorsey raises this point, which is a good one to discuss, I think, now and then. This is a process of sort of a scoring like this that we follow for professional services, but not for, not for any item that would ever be on your award of bids. It's limited. Am I using the correct legal terminology yet? It's limited to contracts of professional services? Yes.
Okay, Ms. Savigny?
Dr. McCabe, on number 3, it's the furnish and installation of the machine technology machinery. So are we saying that we'll only spend to the amount of the grants, the FF&E and Perkins grant funds, or it's just that those grants will be applied against, so we're going to spend $183,000 and then the grants will be applied against it?
I think
Yeah.
we're actually saying the former.
The first
that-
one,
Yes,
okay.
that we're going to spend to the full collection of funding we have, which would include the Perkins grant. So kind of like East Middle, but just in a different way because this project's phased. We've been, and I don't want to use words that sound bad because it's not bad. We've been doing our best to maximize whatever sources of funding we can to complete the project under budget and preserve the project budget through to completion. And so when our folks on the instructional side of the organization can identify other sources of revenue, like the Perkins grant money that can pay for parts of the equipment at Tech, we go ahead and do that. And so we would scope the purchase to the total available funds. And then by contrast, the other item, the milling machine is, I believe I'm correct, it's just the CIP funding because there's no other source available for that.
Okay.
So, and maybe I haven't done a great job pointing this out, but you're approving these things on maybe not a monthly basis, but a fairly consistent basis. And we're using whatever sources of funding we have as we go to make sure that project, when it's complete, that the students have everything they need in the building.
Okay, so we're expecting the full cost to be the $183,000, but we're trying to maximize funding that we
Yes.
get from grants to put towards those
Correct, yeah.
amounts. Okay.
Will they need more in that area?
There's not an indication that we're at that point yet with Career and Tech. We're going to have to talk about some things with East Middle as we finish up that project. But
Okay,
not
I didn't know if Mr. Blizzard needed more equipment or not out of that, or,
No, I think Mr. Eccles is doing, and now Mr. Riddle.
okay,
It's hard to, he looks so young, it's weird to call him Mr. Riddle.
I know that.
But
But he is doing a fantastic
He is
job.
doing a fantastic job. And Tom recently, since he's been at the school, but Bill all along, are doing a fabulous job of working with our project managers and working with Ms. Codner in purchasing. And so we phased and staged this as we go because we have to. So I think earlier when you asked Jim some questions, he mentioned that, Machine Tech is next as part of the phases. So
Right, they move in December.
And so we're buying as we go, but we're
Okay.
making sure we get the whole project complete by the end.
Okay.
And Dr. McCabe, I had one last question about number 5, the classification and compensation study. The $130,000 is a big price tag. And I guess, could I just ask you to kind of give a little bit more detail about like what exactly is the problem that we're trying to solve? Like what is the outcome of this project meant to be?
Would you want me to run with that?
Yeah, you can go ahead.
So this project would be, would focus on basically our employees who aren't teachers or school-based administrators, or not even school-based, they're sort of certificated, our instructional administrators. And there's sort of a few, I don't know what you would call them, situations that have grown over time. And it seems like now might be the optimum time to address position classification because collective bargaining last year was very successful. We have multi-year contracts with those associations, so we're not negotiating salary, steps, COLA, that sort of thing. But as the organization contracted over time, the prior decade or so, where we, and Dr. McCabe has usually a clearer handle on the number of FTE that were reduced than I might have, but it was over 300 positions that were reduced. In certain places, we didn't staff to our formulas, and just to be blunt, we cut positions, and we said to everyone who remained in a school office, in operations, in a department, great news, we didn't have to cut your position, but there's a little bit more work left for everyone to do. We never, at the same time, went back to what we call position classification to say, okay, on the Board of Ed's existing salary scales that have X number of lanes and X number of steps, with those shifts and assignments or realignment of the organization, is position A still being paid on the correct lane? Or should it be considered to be paid differently on the scale? And then another component of this that's also sort of similar is our employment procedures for placement, our salary placement procedures. Everybody has very strong feelings on those, and I've found people can be in opposing viewpoints, but still strongly unhappy with those procedures. We haven't looked at them in a very, very long time. I have Ernesto dug into those because I have nothing else to rely on except for the procedures as they're written. This is an opportunity to have the consultant look at our procedures and make any suggestions for change, which again, you'll have to approve or sign off on, but at least get sort of an external lens on where we sit today as an organization. Do the positions seem to line up in the right places, and or is there a need or a recommendation that you would look at not hiring, but placement procedures on salary scales? And we sort of have this window of time with those employee groups where we can do that outside of the context of having bargaining going on. And I think it would be appreciated by those employee groups because there's no blueprint for them. There's no career ladder for them to sort of, there's not a statute saying this is where you can look to for your future placement. It's sort of up to us to determine that for them and with them. So the timing's good. I will say, to your point, I had a bit of sticker shock. I wasn't anticipating the numbers to be there. We only had the 2 respondents. There are other consultants that do this kind of work, but for whatever reason, we had the 2 respondents. We went with in this case, it happens to be the low bid. It would have been a professional contract, so it could have been different. That is a company that other Maryland school systems have used, so that's helpful to know and to be able to sort of get references. It's also the same agency that the county government used for their recent classification compensation study that they've been implementing over the last few years. So there's a local reference point as well. It wasn't what I thought it would be. But people remind me that, including my family, that I live in the past and that lots of markets have changed, and I would have thought that number was probably going to be somewhere around 70, and apparently that's where the market is now. But we have at least filed public procurement and done our best on that end.
Okay, and this would impact about how many employees?
I have to do this in my head. It would impact roughly 250 AFSCME employees, probably 400-ish case employees and 100 and, let's say, 130 ATSP employees.
So about 1,000.
It wouldn't impact the 2,200 teachers and the 200 and some odd administrators. So of the balance of 3,500, it would be those employees.
I know it's a sticker shock, but, you know, while we have got to do these plans for the educators and do all these career ladders, we really do need to look at them also. And I get what you're saying. I hate the sticker price,
right.
but.
I do too. And we actually talked about this the other day. I don't know that it's, how should I say this? I don't think there's a way to pull back and find a different, cheaper way to do it.
Right.
We either bid it and go with what the market dictated, or we put it on hold, and that's your prerogative tonight. The superintendent and I talked about it at some length, and ultimately, obviously, she agreed that it's time to do it. It's overdue.
Yeah,
Healthy
time.
Organizations would have done it probably on a 10-year average if you could.
I'm sorry, that was my question. When was it done the last time?
So I want to be careful with how I respond to this.
Just generally speaking. Several years ago?
No, Mr. Guthrie was superintendent, so it was, I would guess Mr. Whistler was about 10 years ago.
Wow, okay.
We ultimately had a major mathematical issue with the outcome of that study, and so it was put aside and never implemented. And so.
And honestly, that's one of the reasons why I have a big concern.
Okay, so two responses to that. And again, I don't want to go too deep about that conversation about a different vendor, but at that time period, we did more of the traditional classification aspect, but also market comparability of scales. We're not asking for that component here. And so hopefully that would allay Ms. Savigny's concern. We're not asking for you to do a market analysis of our scales and tell us how much we should we're asking you to do classification and the placement procedures. But so, Mr. Whistler, back to your question, maybe a decade ago since we even entertained it, but nothing got implemented. And so it's been at least the 15 years, it's been longer than the 15 years I've been here since this organization has undertaken this process.
Yeah, I was going to say, you had sticker shock, but that's not a bad price if you consider what the industry's doing and how much it costs them to do these similar analyses.
And I understand why Dr. McCabe's asking to do this while we're in the middle of transitioning to the new salary scale, the career ladder, and then we have these 1,000 people in limbo, and we really need to get that straightened out, that everyone's on the same page. And if that's what you want, then I think then we need to go forward.
And that's one of the reasons why I'm struggling. I won't bring up the name of the other vendor, but that was actually in my notes on the page. Like, okay, that was a lot of money that we spent back then, and that was a bust. Nothing came out of it.
Yeah. Yes,
So
it was.
I guess I'm trying to understand what's the probability that we have a similar outcome of this. We spend a lot of money, and it's not a usable outcome.
I would say none.
No, because it's
Okay.
only a classification study. It's not market analysis.
No.
Okay.
It's something totally different.
And I spent a lot of time, and so did Mr. Burke and Mr. Diaz, interviewing references, if you will, of other public agencies that have used these two, the two companies that bid. The one that we're requesting is not only low bid, but also a lot of experience in Maryland with other public sector agencies, including Frederick County Schools and Prince George's County Schools and the county government. So, I feel very comfortable with them, and actually sort of was, I'm happy that they happen to also be the low bid of the two because of that related experience. So I don't feel like there's anything bad to come out of this. I think as an organization, it's a healthy thing to do even more frequently. I also think our employees would appreciate very much that we look at it, even if not, I will say not every single employee is going to be happy because that's the result of something like this. But I do believe our employees and the units who represent them would be appreciative of the fact that we finally got around to really looking at this.
But I guess I'm just, kind of running down that thought process. But if let's say we have a portion of employees that aren't happy about it, we're not going to not implement.
Correct. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I guess I would say it this way, Mrs. Savigny, and I guess I'm making a joke. I'm not trying to make a joke at anyone's expense. I'm in my 15th year here and my 27th year in Maryland, mostly in human resources related work. I've never had an employee ever once in any place I've worked call me and say, I just wanted to let you know that I think I make exactly the right amount of money and I'm paid in exactly the right lane. So unhappy in the sense that you always, you believe in your value and you should. Our employees are prideful and they ought to be. So there'll be people who will say, I don't know about that. I think I should have been. I think my position should have been in that lane, and that's what I mean by unhappy, not unhappy with the work of this, of this process.
And getting the work, the analysis done doesn't mean that we would necessarily, be obligated to move into action based on the results.
Correct.
So.
And if we did want to, we would build a plan and a budget over time to get there. It's
Right.
not it's not, oh, we got the results, we're going to implement this tomorrow kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I appreciate that. I was really struggling with the sticker shock, but you did answer the original question of there's really no other way to rethink this and reduce scope or anything like that.
Not that I'm aware of, and Mr. Whistler made me feel better a little bit because I had sticker shock. I was like, really, that much? But I guess that's where the market is now, and he seems to be confirming that from his lens. So.
Okay.
All right. I call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. Now we will have a discussion on the proposed revision to Board Policy JJIB, interscholastic and corollary athletic fee. Here he comes.
We are bringing for discussion proposed revisions to policy JJIB, which would eliminate the fee for students participating in corollary athletics. A review of the overall budget indicates that it is not necessary for us to charge a corollary athletics fee. Mr. Shockney and Mr. Duffy are here for any questions.
Do we have a score?
No, ma'am. It started 10 minutes ago. I've not gotten it.
Well, I know, but a lot can happen in 10 minutes. I'm telling you. It's a little ball.
But I also put I set my devices to do not disturb, so I wouldn't.
You can just take it off right. You can take it off right now.
I want to be distracted from.
Well, keep me posted,
Anybody got the
please.
score?
All right. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Duffy?
I do real quick. Under definitions, I think we do need to remove the word ninth grade because we do no longer offer ninth grade athletics.
Thank you. Good point.
That's very true.
Unfortunately, but it's true.
Yeah. Yes, Mr. Whistler.
A quick comment. Again, I made a comment during my board presentation that I was at the Liberty Century game.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, really appreciative of those sports medicine professionals on the sideline. But yeah, I appreciate the invitation. I wasn't sure if you were aware of it, but I was there, and it was great to see him in action.
Yes, sir.
Thanks for looking out for the safety of our kids.
All right.
It used to be our top priority.
Oh, yes. Go ahead.
Just one question I have is, well, not really a question, but just to emphasize that our athletic trainers are really important. And right now, I have heard from a lot of students that they feel that our athletic trainers are really short-staffed, and a lot of them are doubling time in other schools. And we're hoping that maybe if we could see somehow in the next few years, if we could get more athletic trainers to come to our schools and hopefully encourage that.
I heard the same feedback.
You will get no argument from me. In fact, I shared with Ms. Herbert just a few weeks ago, that's my top priority right now. So
Yes.
I'm fully on board with what you're saying.
And with regards to the proposed policy, this is a great opportunity for our students with disabilities and their families, as well as our non-disabled students who participate in the corollary athletics program. We're in a position where we can still stand up our corollary seasons, but we're comfortable that we can do it without charging families.
And I thank you for that after you looked over the books. Dr. Dorsey.
I know that there's a per activity fee, and we're not going to be charging the corollary athletic programs, but give me an idea of what are the fees currently?
Currently, for our interscholastic athletics program, it is $105 per season with a family cap of $150. So if family has multiple students, it caps at $150. Also, for students who participate as dual sport athletes, and there are a few, that's also capped at $150.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Oh, okay, she's done. She was just flipping her card around.
I
Any
have
other?
paid that fee before.
Oh, okay,
so-
all right, then you'll know about it. Any other comments? Well, I appreciate that. That would be absolutely wonderful if we could go forward on that.
Thank you, and I'll try and go check a score for you, Ms.
Yes,
Quinlan.
please, then you let me know. All right. I just want to remind everybody that we will be returning to quasi judicial for an appeal. And we will have our next meeting Wednesday, December 13th. Please, Ms. Battaglia. At 5 p.m. in the boardroom with participation. And on Monday, December 18th, we have a work session, a budget work session, in the boardroom at 125 North Court Street, Westminster. And I want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving and enjoy your family. And may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, put it on.
Okay, real quick. So everyone knows around the holidays I get a little silly with some things, and I think all of us, kind of resonated a couple weeks ago when we all lost a friend. So if you grew up, in the 90s and you watched Friends, and even now with the reruns, everyone kind of identified with a different friend. So in the tradition of Friendsgiving, if you're a Phoebe, don't cheat at football with your friends. And it's okay to eat veggies. If you're a Joey, don't write reminders on your arm, and it's okay to wear your Thanksgiving pants. If you're a Ross, don't tell family secrets at Thanksgiving dinner. It's never a good idea. And make sure you vet your friends before you bring them home. If you're a Rachel, read the recipes. Make sure pages do not stick together, and beef and onion never go in a trifle. If you're a Monica, don't be afraid to use the fancy plates, but if you do, be careful. And if you're a Chandler, just enjoy Thanksgiving. Let your friends and family make you laugh. And make sure you do the turkey dance.
Thank you, Ms. Battaglia. And I call for a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
So moved by Dr. Dorsey, seconded by Mr. Whistler. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously.
Thanksgiving.